All right. Well, hey everybody, and welcome back. And one second, let me adjust my camera a little bit. There we go. All right. So today, what I wanted to talk about is something that, well, I'm sure many people are thinking about, but something that's kind of interesting and looking into a little bit of the nuts and bolts of is what is going to happen with Joe Biden in 2024 as far as re-election, considering the fact that he will be 80 years old heading into 2024, and as I'm sure if you're watching, you can see on the screen right now, his approval ratings have not only been tanking or disapproval ratings have been rising. It's getting to the point now where it's about 60-40 disapprove of the president's job as opposed to approve. Now, one of the interesting things about that is the fact that it has basically been a steady decline with very little sign of changing at all for the majority of a year now. I mean, looking at here, if you look at the numbers going into about August 21st, 2021 is right around when he dips underneath for the first time, and he has been doing nothing but falling further and further underneath approval ever since. Now, however, if somebody were to challenge him for re-election, that would mean somebody would have to want to primary the sitting president. Now, there is some names getting thrown around, and this is where I think things get a little bit interesting, is because one of the main people whose name is getting thrown around right now would be Gavin Newsom. Now, the reason why I want to highlight this is that going back to July 4th weekend, Gavin Newsom ran, I guess, California ads, I guess. He ran a series of ads. I think one ad, but he ran a series of them, basically trying to woo people from the state of Florida to the state of California, which is a little bit interesting. Newsom bought $105,000 worth of spots that began airing on Fox News in Florida, spurring chatter about a potential 2024 presidential run, especially if Joe Biden opts not to seek a second term. Now, again, as far as we know, Joe Biden is pretty dead set on running again in 2024, and nobody of any notice thrown that name in the hat against him. However, moves like this are interesting when you factor in the fact that Ron DeSantis is, I don't want to say probably, but right now Ron DeSantis seems to be one of the odds-on favorites for running for the Republicans, who happens to be the governor of Florida. So, a little bit interesting seeing Gavin Newsom basically maybe starting his 2024 campaign on July 4th weekend in 2022 against Ron DeSantis. And we can go through this and see, but as President Joe Biden's approval rating continues to decline, even among Democratic voters, a potential path to the White House is opening up for Republican Governor Ron DeSantis. On Monday, a new poll from New York Times and Senate College found that Biden's approval rating was reaching an alarmingly low point, with only 33% of Americans saying they approve of the job he was doing. We were just looking at the aggregates. It is indeed that bad. And although Biden was able to maintain a narrow lead over former President Donald Trump in a hypothetical 2024 rematch of 44% to 41%, the Democrat might face worse when pitted against DeSantis. They mentioned air concerns about his age, already 79 years old, and he will be 80 by the time he seeks re-election. As you can see right here, Ron DeSantis. And I think a big part of this, too, it's not the fact that Ron DeSantis is younger. He looks 50, 60 years younger than Joe Biden does. And that really does make a difference, at least in my opinion. I think if you look old and you look like you're not up for it, people are going to think you're old and you're not up for it. Now, anyway, we're going through this because it's pretty interesting to look at some of the potential names because, and this is what I want to highlight, and I guess it's a little bit kind of skipping to the end here, but this was an opinion piece that was ran in Politico magazine, I believe today, right? Yes, or yesterday. It's opinion. Newsom, Harris, Buttigieg, and the Democrats definitely not challenging Joe Biden. Now, there's an art to being in the mix while saying while you're not. This is by Jack Schaefer. Again, opinion piece. This isn't the rule of law, but I want to read through this just to kind of, best way to describe this, just to kind of really take a look at what it would actually be like to challenge Joe Biden from the Democratic side, right? From the outside looking in, Joe Biden's almost 80. Nobody likes him. His approval rating is worse than Trump. And Trump was worse than Hitler, according to Van Jones. So apparently Biden's even worse than Hitler right now. But it's one way of looking at it. But from inside the Democratic Party, from people who want to keep their careers as Democrats, it might not be so simple. So let's go through this. Every Democratic politician with a speck of ambition right now is asking himself or herself the same question in the mirror this week. If 79-year-old Joe Biden drops dead or drops out, how prepared will I be to run for president? Kamala Harris, by virtue of her status as vice president, asked herself and answered that question in the affirmative when she put her on the ticket. So yes, not Kamala. Which I almost just skipped over this paragraph in my mind because honestly, I feel like Kamala Harris is the name of all of these who's just getting lost in the shuffle the absolute most. I think for good reason. I believe if everybody was being talked about is everyone that ran as a Democrat in 2020, Kamala Harris got smoked worse than anyone. I mean, Kamala Harris famously was polling beneath Andrew Yang in her own home state and then dropped out shortly after. I mean, this was very questionable. She was made VP. A lot of people talking about the time she was named VP. Part of the reason why Biden wanted her as VP is because it's almost like a little bit of protection, right? It's a buffer. It's this idea that if you want to replace me, she's next in line. Do you want her? Voters said no overwhelmingly. Now, again, it's a little bit interesting when you look at the fact that 60% of voters are disapproving of the job Joe Biden's doing. At a certain point, people might say, well, who cares, man? Why not? Why not throw in Kamala Harris? However, political etiquette prohibits A-list politicians from challenging an incumbent president from their own party. There are exceptions to this rule, of course, such as when long-shot Senator Eugene McCarthy weakened President Lyndon Johnson in the '68 New Hampshire primary, thereby encouraging Senator Robert Kennedy to join him in the race and drive Johnson out. Again, 1968, you'll notice when this happened. In 1980, Senator Edward Kennedy could take on President Jimmy Carter without much drama because the Kennedys were out. But again, 1980 and 1968. Now, clearly, Joe Biden being president is extenuating circumstances, right? I don't think that if, something happened for the first time in 40 years during Joe Biden's term, people are really that much of an eye, because it seems like we are in a little bit of unprecedented waters with him. However, he mentions by signaling his intention to run once more, Biden has blocked anybody but a C-lister from going up against him. But the party's most ambitious players want an insurance plan in case fate or Joe himself delete him from the race. And a host of Democrat aspirants know this very well. And he goes on a little bit to talk about the fact that, yes, you basically need to keep your name in the mix without saying, right now, 2 years out, I'm running against the current president. You can't really start a civil war in your own party while his approval ratings are tanking. And, if you want to look even more, extrapolating it a little bit further, you're looking at the fact that, you can scroll down here, real clear as it right here, Democrats are projecting right now to get hammered in the 2022 midterms. I believe they have a slim majority now. They're projected to have a 50 or 40 seat minority. Senate, which is currently 50-50, right now it looks like it's a lot closer. About, a lot of it's decided, but there's enough toss-ups to go either way. And this is also what's very interesting and something I want to touch on as well, is the governorship projections looking forward to 2022. You'll notice that there's a couple states, thank you, Real Clear, for updating on me. But there's one state that is very blue for the Senate, for the governor, and even for the few House things it is. That is California. Because California, of course, is one of the safer Democrat states, and that is where we get to the idea of one, and let me find my right thing. Here we go. Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom was running a bunch of ads in the state of Florida, going up against who he's probably going to be going up against if he ran, which would be Ron DeSantis. But here he is today, 13th of July, as you can see in the nation's capital. He's thanking FLOTUS for talking all things education at the White House, and how California is transforming our schools to better serve all kids, from free school meals to universal pre-K and more. Not a whole lot. I mean, this is very much just generic PR posting from the office of the governor. But a little interesting to see him in, Washington, D.C. today. Especially because another famous Democrat with a little bit, or Democratic governor with some whispers of potentially being in the running, was also found himself in Washington, D.C. just a few days ago. Make sure I get the right ad. This is the wrong one, but anyway, spoilers. The governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, has been on a little bit of a similar, I don't want to say campaign tour, but again, kind of going back to the Political article, keeping himself in the mix without actually keeping himself too far in the mix, right? You have here Governor J.B. Pritzker from the Chicago Tribune, scheduled speech to Florida Democrats as to speculation and criticism. He is eyeing the White House. Right? Again, key thing here from the headline, you'll notice, the speculation and criticism. It's easy to look at polling numbers. It's easy, especially if you don't like Joe Biden, to say, well, why would you not just run against Joe Biden? People don't really like him. He's old. He's doing poorly. He seems to be just unlikable the more we see of him anyway, politics aside. But again, the reality is that's basically declaring open civil war in your own party as a Democrat, right? Now, you can make any case you want. You can make cases to the left of Biden. Biden's not far enough left. It doesn't matter. This is an existential threat to the Democratic Party. They have a president in office. Nobody likes him. And not only does nobody like him, the rank and file is not really circling the wagons, right? You get down to the governors of major states, because Illinois and California, some of the, major Democrat states in the entire country, and you have their most prominent political figures perhaps preemptively campaigning against the individual they'll be running against in 2024. So it is a very weird and kind of tenuous position we're in. Now, where this gets even a little bit more distressing, I want to highlight this Yahoo News poll. Apologize. 18% of Americans say Biden should run for re-election in 2024, a new low. Now, this is a Yahoo News / YouGov poll that found this, but it said just 18% of Americans say Biden should run for re-election. And nearly 2/3 say he should just bow out now. And what's even more troubling is, for the first time, more Democrats now say he should pass on a second term than say he should pursue. Which, again, when you look at the approval ratings, I can't imagine it's only 44% of Democrats that are approving, or 38% of Democrats that are approving, and everyone else is a Republican. I mean, it's clearly getting to the point where Democrats are disapproving of Joe Biden, which I'm sure anyone watching here is a Democrat, probably is disapproving of Joe Biden. But that is once again where we kind of get into where the conflict of interest between having two major political parties that absolutely dominate everything and allegedly, free, open democratic system. This individual right here lays out a very good case for why you can't just primary Joe Biden. It might tank your career. Even if, here's the thing, you could say you're running for against Joe Biden today, anger him, he could try to run against you, he could have to drop out 2 years from now. Doesn't matter, your career's probably done. Right? Like, if you are making yourself the enemy of the party, you're probably not going to last very long in it. And so if you want to keep your job, maybe you need to go against 41% of your own party and, 80% of Americans. Because, that's, this is a survey of 1,600 people, by the way. It's one thing it's important to keep in mind. This is 1,600 people who felt this way, but normally when I'm looking at polling data, I kind of look at it two ways. You look at the numbers, one, but then you also just kind of does this feel like what I see, right? Does it feel like most people don't like Joe Biden and think he should run for re-election from what I'm seeing? Yeah, it kind of feels like that, right? And then so when data comes out that, affirms it at a level, again, I wouldn't say it's 90-10. There's dozens of people out there that still support the president very strongly, but it definitely is encroaching to 60-40, 70-30. The vast majority of people are not fans of Joe Biden. But the scary thing is in our current system, that really just might not matter at all. And what makes it even more interesting is, let's say Biden's name does make it on the ballot, right? Some Democrats might say, well, shoot, does that mean we just have President DeSantis then? Even worse, Trump again? Then this is a pretty interesting, again, a little bit of piece of data. This came out of Axios, posted today, 10 hours ago. The Democratic electorate's seismic shift. So Democrats now have a bigger advantage among white college graduates than they do with non-white voters, according to a New York Times and Siena College poll. So we're seeing a political realignment in real time, with Democrats becoming the party of upscale voters concerned more about issues like gun control and abortion rights, and Republicans are quietly building a multiracial coalition of working class voters with inflation as an accelerant. What's really fascinating about this is, I would say, without a whole lot of data and stuff to point to and kind of back it up for a while, this has kind of been, I don't know, this outline here, this general breakdown of the parties and the direction they're heading in, it's kind of unofficially been looked at this way by a lot of people. A lot of people said it was BS, though, and it's not happening. It's interesting to seeing Axios and a New York Times poll now supporting pretty much that, yeah, this is what's happening. This is legitimately the future of politics in America. People can deny it. People can say, no, there's no way. Republicans are the worst, or Democrats are always for this, or, Republicans don't want that. The reality is, if you just look at who's voting for who, and again, I think too often people think that you have to vote for whatever is literally in your best interest according to you at the time, when it's dude, people vote for all kinds of reasons, right? I mean, going back to J.B. Pritzker, people would literally not vote for him because they think he looks kind of gross. They might not say it out loud, but there are people who would vote for him who would do that. There's probably people who probably just preferred Biden over Trump because he didn't look as gross as him. But anyway, don't want to get too lost in that. I didn't mention more here about the diverse Republicans, so I don't want to talk about too much. But what's interesting here is, as they mentioned at the very bottom, so between the lines, Dems' fortunes are bolstered by a slice of well-off, socially liberal voters who disapprove of Biden's performance and strongly support Democrats for other races. Now, that's, again, I think that more or less sounds about right? That sounds pretty close. But that's also how you get how we find ourselves here. It's how you find yourself in a situation where majority of Americans don't want Biden running at all, party regardless. Majority of Democrats don't even really want him running again, and the majority of Americans think he's just doing an awful job. However, it's probably still career suicide to run against him. To do anything but, try your best to stand. Anything else is probably still career suicide. And people know it. People are talking about it. I mean, if you want to replace Biden, you're going to have to outlast him, not challenge him. So this whole opinion piece is talking about the fact that you kind of have to just keep your name in, but don't make it official until Biden makes his choice. But then what happens if Biden does tough it out for another 2 years, right? What if he does? What if 80-year-old Joe Biden is on the ballot in 2024? Are we going to see some massive seismic shift towards Republicans? Are Republicans all of a sudden going to have like a president who wins the popular vote? Is that what's going to happen? Or is there really a very large percentage of Democratic voters who kind of don't care about what's happening on the ground? They're mostly kind of, well-off social liberal people who disapprove of Biden, but they're not going to vote for someone else, right? They're not going to vote for Ron. You think people that are described as of well-off and socially liberal are going to vote for Ron DeSantis, right? I don't think so. I think Joe Biden, even if nobody wants him to be there, if his name's on the ballot, he's probably going to get elected again. Unless, we see, but again, it's this idea that Ron DeSantis or whoever, I'm using Ron DeSantis as kind of a stand-in, but whoever would eventually be the Republican running if it's Trump again, they are becoming less and less relevant, I would say, as far as who it is. It really is, moving into 2022, going to be a vote for or against Joe Biden and the current establishment, which I feel like most, kind of like, post your second term when you're running for president, it kind of is. I mean, look back at the Trump election that happened in 2016 or 20, sorry. It was an indictment on Trump. You were voting for or against Trump. Biden's name was just on the ballot. He was just the other guy. But you're voting for or against Trump. Well, heading into 2024, if Biden's name is on the ballot, I have to imagine it'd be very similar. You're voting for or against Biden. Whoever happens to be the Republican, whatever. That Republican primary, very much like a Democratic primary, will be a bloodbath because they kind of know it. It's kind of the reason why the Democratic primary was so insane with so many names. It's because they knew no one was going to be voting for or against them. They're voting for or against the current president. However, it is a little bit scary to keep in mind that Joe Biden is basically plummeting to worse than Trump was with approval. And I mean, I don't have the data points offhand, but the media covered the two presidents very differently, right? Like if people are influenced by, honestly, this chart right here is very good. It's a very good argument for the media not being able to influence people that well, right? I mean, they haven't necessarily been like totally fawning for Biden the entire time. There's been some critical stuff with Biden here and there, but for the most part, Biden has had a much, much, much less adversarial relationship with the press than Trump did, but it's not doing anything. I mean, again, I don't have it pulled up. Give me 1 second. I want to pull it up. This is something that really is kind of fascinating to me, is the idea that... All right, 1 second. Maybe it wasn't... Sorry. Apologies to Van Jones. However, Donald Trump was called many things. Again, Donald Trump was at one point called worse than Hitler. Maybe it was Donald Lemon. Maybe it was someone on CNN. But he had a higher approval rating than Joe Biden does at this point in his term. What does that mean? What does that mean that the most hated president of all time had a higher or a similar approval rating as Joe Biden does now? What does it mean as far as how influential and important the current voter's voice is at this time? At least on, the national scale. If we find ourselves with two radically different presidents, right? I don't think anyone would say Biden and Trump are necessarily two sides of the same coin. They have radically different ways of going about everything. We find ourselves in a very similar situation again. Most people don't like him. And actually, I mean, it was never this bad for Trump at any point. It was never this bad for Trump, right? It was never 18% of Americans said Trump should run for re-election. It never was. He had a base, and I think that's what we're kind of learning is, so I was kind of talking about a moment ago, Biden was the other guy on the ballot. right? Do you want Trump or do you want to go with the other guy? And people chose the other guy, but now we're seeing what happens when you're the other guy and you have no real base. You have no real support. Like, think, who stands up for Biden who won't just stand up for anybody at Capitol Hill at any time, no matter what they do? Not many people, right? A lot of people are very critical of Joe Biden, and it's showing in many different ways. But, again, the media has been a little bit more soft-handed with him. But just, again, I want to kind of drive home, though, a little bit how, I don't want to say frightening is the word for it, but even if this poll is 100% reflective of the country, and it feels like it to me, it's pretty dang close, that 18% of people, and again, most Democrats don't want him, that actually just might not matter. And I want to highlight this. So this is from today. Hannah Knowles, who, let me just highlight where she's from, Washington Post, covering campaigns. After a speech in D.C. today, Gavin Newsom reiterated his frustration with the Democratic response to GOP gains writ large, but said emphatically that Joe Biden should run for re-election. The Democratic Party institutionally is not doing justice as it relates to being a counter-narrative and helping define the terms of an agenda that is organized and cohesive at all levels of government. Oh my God, that is some... maybe Gavin Newsom should be president. If he can string together sentences like this, maybe he should be president. How many words is that to say nothing? So let's go. The Democratic Party institutionally is not doing justice as it relates to being a counter-narrative and helping define the terms of an agenda that is organized and cohesive at all levels of government. I have a feeling Joe Biden will never be able to make a case for why his agenda is organized and cohesive at all levels of government. I don't think any Democrat can make the case right now, Republicans not as much, that there is a cohesive and organized and defined agenda currently heading into the 2022 midterms in 2024. So, and again, going back to the op-ed read a minute ago, these people know that. Gavin Newsom knows that right now, he needs to emphatically say that Joe Biden should run for re-election. He can't actually start throwing his name in that hat. Again, what he can do and what he did do is he's starting to he's putting himself and DeSantis in the same sentence, just in case they end up on the same ballot, right? Just in case it is DeSantis and Newsom. He wants to make sure that, his name has been showing up next to DeSantis' name for a little while here. Even though the ad itself, let's see, do they have it here? Is this the ad? Here we go. I'll run it. I'll run this ad. I want you guys to pay attention to this and see if you think this feels like a campaign ad or not.
It's Independence Day, so let's talk about what's going on in America. Freedom, it's under attack in your state. Your Republican leaders, they're banning books, making it harder to vote, restricting speech in classrooms, even criminalizing women and doctors. I urge all of you living in Florida to join the fight. Or join us in California, where we still believe in freedom. Freedom of speech, freedom to choose, freedom from hate, and the freedom to love. Don't let them take your freedom.
Paid for by Newsom for California Governor 2022.
It's in.
Isn't that bizarre? Paid for by Newsom for governor. Why is Newsom for governor paying for ads to be ran in Florida? The state doesn't border California, and there's some transplants, I guess. The thing is, they're both pretty much sunny states in a lot of the parts people live in. So, I don't think a lot of people live in California and vacation or Florida or vice versa. So why would he be doing that? I mean, we all know why, but again, unfortunately, it might not end up mattering. Right? Even though they're bickering, even though DeSantis is, going back and forth with Newsom, Newsom's emphatic, Biden should run for re-election. And one of the shrewdest political operators, whose name was mentioned here at the top, right? We got Pete Buttigieg. I think it's interesting to highlight what Pete's been doing instead. So let's go through this. This was posted a couple days ago, I think about a week ago. In Politico, the West Wing Playbook. Pete goes pure Michigan. So the shortest way home for Pete Buttigieg now is a flight to Michigan. The transportation secretary and former South Bend mayor has changed his residency from Indiana to the Wolverine state, where he plans to vote this fall. Buttigieg's move was for family reasons, specifically his husband's family. A spokesperson said, moving to Chasten's hometown of Traverse City allowed them to be closer to his parents, which became especially important to them after they adopted their twins, often relying on Chasten's parent for help with childcare. Sounds pretty, just moving for his family. But the move also has another significant benefit. With 2 Democratic senators and a Democratic governor, Michigan is a much more hospitable state for a fellow Democrat with political ambitions. It's also in the running to replace Iowa as the first presidential nominating contest. Buttigieg has been grip and grinning the state's politicos as well, visiting the annual Mackinac Policy Conference in recent weeks. Regardless of his motivations, Buttigieg's allies have made a number of moves that better position the secretary for his political future. And they go through and mention some other stuff he did. Is this the one they mention? Here he was hanging out with Liz Smith, his former top political, this was campaign manager, whatever, and Michigan State Senator Mallory McMorrow, who was engaged as an up-and-coming party star. This was at the Democratic National Committee's LGBTQ gala in New York City. But again, this is kind of normal political stuff. What's interesting, though, is, again, the people that might be looking to position themselves in a place to replace Biden, I would pay close attention to Buttigieg and other guys, because Pete Buttigieg was a mayor of a college town, did absolutely nothing, ran a pretty unimpressive and really not that great presidential campaign, and found himself in the transportation secretary role. Baby, you want to talk about falling up? I mean, realistically, Pete Buttigieg, has anyone even mentioned if he's a good mayor or not? Because he didn't care about being mayor. I believe what happened is he ran for something else, lost. It was like, this will be mayor. And as soon as he became mayor and saw that the kind of presidency was open, immediately just basically kind of abandoned the mayorship to run for president. And now we see him potentially, and honestly, I don't even know if you could say potentially, he seems to have largely not taken very seriously his transportation secretary role for the most part. I think many people forget that he's even the transportation secretary. He very, just infamously at this point, was on maternity leave when him and Chasten adopted twins during some of the main infrastructure crises as far as the shipping, getting stuff across the country, which you would think is something even if the transportation secretary can't go down on the street level and necessarily direct traffic, there's got to be something he could be doing, I'm sure he makes enough money to pay somebody to help with the kids if he absolutely had to, or, he doesn't have to be transportation secretary and someone else could have done it. But no, stayed on the job, hasn't done very good, but that seems to be a recipe for success in most political parties. It's kind of hard not to fall up as long as you play by the rules and do what you're supposed to do. And we're seeing here some of the people, much bigger brains than I do when it comes about politics, saying there's a very low chance there's nothing else behind this move, right? Very low chance, and that's what they're doing. But the reason I want to kind of point that out again is the idea that the people that are looking to maybe make a move on Biden or replace Biden, they're looking down the line. They're probably not looking at 2024, which unfortunately finds us in a position where no one's going to care if we don't want Biden on the ballot. He's probably going to end up there if he wants to be. And really, if he physically can be. So what can we do about it, though, right? What is the way out of it? I think this is where it does become very important to continue to have more and more and more people moving towards independent, just something out of the major party systems, right? We have ranked choice voting that's already going to be actually done in Alaska. I believe here in Nevada, we'll be able to vote if we want to implement it moving forward. There's a lot of things that can be done, but I think things like this highlight the need for something to break the stranglehold the two parties have. Like in what world does it make sense that even though less than 1/5 of people want him to run, he probably will run and probably will win, right? I mean, like, how many people in chat or in comments would disagree with that? That if Biden does just, if they can keep him upright in 2024, he'll probably win and he'll probably run. And I feel like that. There's a chance someone else beats him, but I mean, it would take a massive, massive, massive shift, I would say, with the Republican voting base. Because the Democrats are losing voters, but again, the majority of Democratic voters are the people who aren't really as impacted necessarily by some of the economic policy as other people. The majority of Democratic voters are trending more and more and more and more and more towards wealthy people. People that are pretty well off. People that literally have no problem with the status quo. They're doing great. They want status quo. They want Joe Biden. It's pretty good for them. Because, some people even are well off enough, or even though if they're making a little bit less money, they're seeing the social stuff they want done, so who cares? They'll pay a 10% tax to have the things they want done in the White House done in the White House. Fortunately, it leaves a lot of people left behind. It's the reason why Axios is pointing out that the Republicans are building a multiracial coalition of working class voters. Like, does that sound like the Republican Party at all from what the kind of narrative of it? People will argue back and forth that this is what the Republican Party is. Some people do have that point. I don't know about that as much. I think it depends on where you're at. But this is definitely a challenge and something to keep an eye on moving into 2024, right? We might not want Biden. Biden might not be popular. Biden might be doing an awful job, but he also might be on the ballot again in 2024. Because the way things work up on Capitol Hill in D.C., it just won't be popular to advocate for anything else as long as Biden wants to stay on the ballot. And he's made, as far as we know, every single opportunity he's had to reaffirm that he is running in 2024, he has. I believe there's even some reports, I'm not pulled up here, but I've even seen some reports that he's frustrated with media coverage of other people potentially running. Like, he doesn't like, he's like, why am I reading headlines that say that Gavin Newsom's going to run against me in 2024? Why am I reading this? You know, he probably called Nancy Pelosi and said, why is your nephew running as your president? Are you kidding me? So that's the gist of it. That was mostly what I wanted to talk about today. I want to say hi to everyone in chat. Seeing a lot of names I haven't seen in a while. Yes, I am. I am back. I'm hoping to have us back. Not, Cardin will be coming in and out because we're still in different areas, but I am very much working to getting to that point as well. So I'll keep you guys posted on that. And then, yeah. And any other questions, anything else you guys want to talk about this or anything else? Kind of have some time here to hang out and talk to you guys. Oh, also, you know what? I guess kind of as we're kind of hanging out here and cooling down for a minute, something else I want to highlight. Give me 1 second. Yeah, I'll do it over here. As something that I think is a little bit interesting, looking forward on the Republican side. Because I know I'd been kind of talking about just Ron DeSantis is probably running. But one other, I guess, little, something we have to keep in mind, unfortunately, is the fact that it might not be DeSantis running in 2024. It might be Donald Trump coming back again. And I honestly think, this sounds dumb, but I really do think this is good for Trump, what's happening right here. His little beef going on with Elon Musk at the moment. So, I guess if you guys haven't heard about it yet, basically they've been kind of going back and forth on... The funny thing about this, too, if you want to talk about the beef and how it's how this rivalry and why I think it is something that could potentially help Donald Trump moving forward into 2024, is the fact that even though people don't like Donald Trump a lot, some people do, right? Elon Musk is in a similar boat. People like Donald Trump more than they like Elon Musk. Do they mention it here? Elon Musk found it out the hard way when he tweeted a photo out that basically was the button meme, right? Hate Donald Trump or hate Joe Biden. And he's like, progressives can't make a choice. Too many people said, I can make a choice. I hate you way more than Trump. But this is exactly the kind of news and press Trump needs to get back in. Because I think, as we pointed out, and a lot of people realize, it's not about what Americans necessarily want politically. It's not exactly how things are working. Biden's going to run if he can make it there. And, if Biden's on the ballot again, why not Trump? But this is, for the first time in a while, I would say, this has been positive coverage and good news for Trump. I'm seeing Truth Social being posted all over. People are going to Truth Social to read, which again is kind of the other funny wrinkle about this, right? Elon Musk is bashing Trump on his platform that he's about to own or wants to own or is maybe going to own, whatever, Twitter. And then Donald Trump is responding on the platform he owns, Truth Social, and they're going back and forth. This is a great little blurb, but I want to read this. Because one thing about Donald Trump, he's always had a way with words. That whether it's electric cars that don't drive long enough, driverless cars that crash, or rocket ships to nowhere, without which subsidies he'd be worthless, and telling me how he was a big Trump fan and Republican, I could have said, drop to your knees and beg, and he would have done it. That's what Donald Trump said about Elon Musk. All right. But heading into the midterms, which with the way our political system works now, by the time the midterms are kind of wrapped, 2024 presidential campaign starts. About 2 years out is normally when it kind of starts really, really raising up. A couple of big social wins for Trump heading into it could put his name in the mix more than it was. A few months ago, I would have said Donald Trump's probably in no way in hell going to be anywhere near the Republican ticket. He's just too unliked. He's too, even if people don't hate him, he's just not popular enough. But I don't know, man. Feuding with Elon Musk and finding yourself the more likable of the two for many people, it could be the start. Now, I'm not saying this is the biggest deal ever, and this is it, it's happening. But something to keep an eye on. Again, this is as far as like optically goes, like society goes, this has been a win for Trump. People are reading what Trump's saying about him. I have to admit, when I first saw this, let me see if I can, hold on. I want to pull it up on my other screen first. I want to see if I can show you guys the actual photo. Yeah, there we go. And this stuff is goofy, right? But I mean, the reality is, this has always been the place Donald Trump did the best. Even when he was in office. I think it's one of the reasons why when he was in office, the longer it went on, the worse it got. Is because as a public figure, he'd always been likable. He had always been popular. And Elon Musk has maybe been flying a little bit too close to the sun this last few years. He's really kind of getting himself in a lot of things. And this is funny. People agreed with Trump when he said this. You know? And so, something to keep an eye on. Something to keep watch, right? It might not necessarily be so easily Ron DeSantis running for the Republicans. Honestly, it could be another name that's not Trump or DeSantis very easily. I would say about as likely. It does seem to be pretty frequently the front, like the way too early front runner normally is and also ran well before the election cycle actually kind of takes its hold. I feel like that's happened a lot of times, right? Name gets floated. Hey, this might be the person to watch out for running. By the time we get to 2023, it might be a much different thing, right? Like 3 years is a long time for Ron DeSantis to either screw his career up, and also, I think something else is important to kind of point out and keep in mind too, just quickly going back to this. This breakdown of the two parties 3 years ago, I would have said seemed more like a Republican pipe dream than anything, right? The Democrats just keep moving to being mostly well-off, college-educated people that care about social stuff more than economic stuff. And that the Republicans are getting a multiracial coalition of working-class voters who are interested in the economy and want the economy to turn around. Because here's the thing. It's like people will bite the bullet and vote for someone they don't love for economic reasons, I think a lot faster than they'll bite the bullet and vote for someone they don't love for, like, social policy reasons, you know? Because it's like, I feel like those two go hand in hand more, right? If you don't like someone and don't trust them, why would you think they're going to implement the social policies you want, right? But if you don't like someone and don't trust them, but what they want to do will make you money, you know, you might overlook it a little bit easier. You might look the other way a little bit more. And that's where we're going. But also, just the reason why I wanted to bring this up, though, is, again, 3 years is a long time. Heading into 2024, this might be just, you know, an interesting little blip that happened a few years back. Things could flip very quickly. Things don't stay the same forever. All right. Also like Cactus. Happy birthday, by the way. He said, if I were granted any political policy to be enacted for my birthday, what would I choose? That's a tough question. Okay. I'm going to just pick one in no order, right? Because I can guarantee you there's more pressing things I could think of. But I legitimately would push for much stricter regulations to maybe even outright banning of a lot of commercial pornography. That would be my little pet project that I would do. I think things have gone farther than they need to go. And I think sometimes regulation actually is not the worst thing ever. Sometimes regulation doesn't kill a market, but it brings it in line with society. That's what I think. However, I could be on the out, and maybe society wants something much different than what I do. So it's one of the reasons why I don't like to be very prescriptive of policy and say things should be like this. And I'm more just trying to highlight different angles and different things that could be going on. Because realistically, man, I don't know if 300 million people would want to live in my America. The same way I know I don't want to live in the America of probably 299 million people either, right? So it's one of the reasons why we have to have so much collaborative stuff in a larger society like this. And I think actually one of the things that social media and kind of just the growing kind of cultural divide in this country, one of the big issues with it, a lot of people kind of get it in their head. They get these ideas that as a society we have made decisions that we never made. You know, like some people just feel like, well, I mean, like obviously we all accept that this is true. But in reality, most people haven't even been asked. Most people have no idea. They have a different opinion on it. And it leads to a lot of kind of, people missing each other. A lot of needless clashes where you have one person thinking that this is settled and another person who has no idea that was even on the table. So yeah, anyway, that's fine. But again, to get back to it, I think that there's just, I think the pornography industries in America have, and again, a lot of these aren't even based in America. They're just, a lot of Americans use them. I don't know. I think they've gotten a little bit out of hand. Let's see if I can pull this up for you guys and show it to you. I saw one of those things recently where they show you what the most popular websites were by users and how it shifts over the years, Is this the one? Let me look. No. It was on Twitter. Anyway, they had a little bar, right? Like a bar graph to kind of show you what was being charted. And there was different colors for the different things. Like social media was like red, I think. I think search engines were like yellow or something. Here, let me see. I really do want to show it to you guys. Haha. Here it is. I knew I'd find it. All right, cool. So, something that's interesting about this is, pause it right here. So this is in 1993, right? You look at the most popular websites in 1993. One thing I think is shocking is in May 1993, IMDb was on the list. It had, 27,000 monthly visits. That's nothing. But that's a website that's around still. Apple, right? Bloomberg. I'm kind of interested to see because, CompuServe, InfoSeek, Netscape, Prodigy. I mean, a lot of this stuff is either completely gone or just kind of exists in name only at this point. Anyway, I want to draw your attention over here where it shows blue is for search engine, social media, which in 1993 there was no social media, and news, entertainment, and services, which you could see back in the early 90s, that was generally the internet. News, you could go to AOL for you just go to AOL and read America Online. I'm old enough to remember the discs. I was 1 year old in 1993, so more about 97, 98 is what I remember, like 99 getting into those times. But, excuse me, you'll notice one of the things on here is adult entertainment. And I'm just going to let this run in the background. I want you guys to keep an eye on it. And it is a really kind of fascinating thing to keep in mind, right? To see. It's pretty cool to see how it goes. Some of these names, GeoCities, Webcrawler, Excite, InfoSeek. The fact that AOL was the most dominant website ever at one point, and now I'm sure many young people don't even know what AOL is. They have no idea that America Online was at one point the internet for people. It's kind of like how people would say they wouldn't say video games, they would say Nintendo for a long time. It was just the AOL for many people. That was the internet. You see Amazon, you see... but again, one of the different little color icons they have there is for adult entertainment. Now, there was no reason why in 2001, probably largely image-based, I would guess, just with the way there wasn't a lot of... It was pre-YouTube. There's no reason why there couldn't have been adult entertainment websites. I mean, pornographic magazines were popular for many years. But you'll notice that's not what people were going on the internet for. And 2001's not ancient history. They were going to Yahoo, they were going to MSN, AOL, basically your default homepage. A lot of people will just click on the Internet Explorer and that's what they get. Google, BBC, which is, kind of provides a lot of different stuff for people in England. I don't know if in 2001 they would have as much video streaming. Probably not. But still, news, entertainment, stuff like that. So let's see. Let's just keep going. When is it that this adult entertainment white square becomes relevant? Because once again, we're in 2003. We're not in ancient history. Almost 20 years ago now, but some time into the internet, and it's still not there. We see weather. We see Walmart. Also, by the way, keep in mind, up until 2003, social media was nowhere near this. This is the first appearance of social media. Now, I just want you to kind of look at what social media does between 2005 and now as far as representation on this chart. Because at first it was just MySpace. And you saw MySpace slowly go up. Then YouTube comes out. Then Facebook comes out. MySpace suddenly is not so popular anymore. Now heading in 2009, we see that social media is slowly creeping up towards some of the most popular and influential stuff on the internet. Still, though, it's just YouTube and Facebook. It's not that much stuff going on. Suddenly we see I honestly don't even recognize what that one at the bottom is. Probably, I'm assuming VK. I'm assuming it's a non-Western social media. But Twitter, you see Twitter on the list. Instagram on the list. Keep in mind, we're in 2015. We still don't see adult entertainment on this list, right? Because it hasn't always been the most dominant force. Of course, people were watching pornography in 2015 on the internet, right? But it was not some massive dominant corner of the internet. Now, with every year, more people get online, but still, I mean, we saw it happen with social media. Things don't just dominate forever. They grow over time, right? There was once only MySpace on this list. Now there's no MySpace. Now MySpace is irrelevant on this list, and we're in 2017. And again, we still haven't seen adult entertainment crack this list yet. That's still seemingly a meaningless little piece of information right there. Oh, here we go. 2019. The first one appears at the very bottom. That's why it's there. And let's see, what does it do from 2019 on? It slowly hangs out there at the bottom as one of the most visited websites in the entire world. Until we get to January 2022. Right? We don't see the same kind of like meteoric rise that MySpace had. But this stuff hasn't always been here. It hasn't been with us forever. It's not always been one of the most popular things on the internet. It was like one massive pornography site everyone went to. It is a relatively more recent phenomenon, the prevalence of it, right? And that's not even to count the fact that, like one big website like that isn't even really the largest driving force of it. You have many other driving forces of this stuff. So yeah, that was just a little thing I wanted to mention. Some people probably still go to MySpace. I can't imagine that many, but there's probably some people who still go to MySpace. Here's the thing. So I mentioned here, Chris Flores said maybe COVID and being stuck at home helped rocket traffic to that industry. While that's potentially it, this is a story that's kind of a little bit out of the Twitter or out of the political sphere. However, this is something else to keep in mind. It's not just, again, like one big video aggregate website that is doing it. This is from Dexerto. It's mostly covers esports and video games. But Amaranth, who's a Twitch streamer, if you're unaware, and a OnlyFans model, claims OnlyFans is making her $1 million plus per month. Do they have the picture of it? No, but I'm sure they'll mention here in it. Despite being hit with bans, will be demonetized. 27-year-olds continue to stream on Twitch, but she's also a bride in her rise and became a star elsewhere. Like many streamers, she built up a huge following in OnlyFans, and if she wanted to become her full-time gig, how much money she's making. During a stream with H3's Ethan Klein, where the YouTuber slewed her for crushing it, she revealed that she's making a personal best from the previous month, and it was a bit of an insane amount. Oh, sorry, doesn't have the info I'm looking for, but anyway. She says, thank you, I'm really excited about it. Last month was actually my highest month ever. She revealed she made $1.1 million. Do they mention it here? No, they don't mention it down here. However, I believe she would later go on to post a photo of her kind of like books from OnlyFans, like her actually money coming in and out. I believe year to date, or no, since she started 2 years ago or something like that, I think she's raked in over $30 million. So, here we go. That's what I was looking for. Here we go. Sorry about that, but and Jack just posted on Twitter. So, $33 million. $33 million. That's how much she claims to have made. And I believe, did she mention how many years she's been doing this? Can we look at, I don't know if you guys can see that. However, I mean, this is clearly one of the most dominant industries on the internet. I mean, because by the way, OnlyFans, think about that. If there's an OnlyFans website, if they take 2% in processing fees, would you want 2% of $33 million? I would take it. You know? And then they probably take more than 2%, right? I think, just using like eBay, Amazon, at least for like sales and stuff like that. Generally, those places take like close to 10%. when it's all said and done. Right? Maybe for like a top, if you're like a popular user, they'll give you a bit of a deal. But for the most part, I've seen like 5 to 10% somewhere in that range is generally when you're using a website that lets you use it for free. That's generally like on the good end of what you're looking at, if not all the way up to like 20%. Because the models don't pay to be on these sites, I don't believe. I think they just sign up and start posting. And people just pay them if they want. And before the money gets into your pocket, these websites take a small cut. But yeah, it's just one of the reasons why I think that this is an industry that has exploded well beyond, I think, what people originally looked at it as. And it's getting to a point where some real regulation does need to come in on some level. Not because she's making $33 million, but because this is becoming a massive money industry. I mean, I don't think anybody needs to really, at this day and age, kind of be driven on the point that there is no real moderation as far as what gets posted on these websites. A lot of criminal content is posted on some of the most popular visited websites in the world. Actual crimes, stuff that's illegal. Most of the time it stays up there for a very long time before it's taken down. When it is taken down, there's little to no repercussion to the people who posted or uploaded it or hosted it. And it's growing. It's getting bigger, right? I mean, again, to go back to this, adult entertainment doesn't even make a blip on this list for the first 20 years. And then suddenly, there it is, right? I mean, it is curiously right at the beginning of the pandemic. But, September 2019 is pre-pandemic, right? It had been tracking up there before that. So, sorry, that was a bit of a rant, bit of a tangent, bit of a side thing. But just to get to my point, though, of why I do feel that way. I just feel like, Because, by the way, I think social media should be regulated more than it is now. I think social media followed the very same trajectory to what I'm imagining pornography will follow. Maybe not to this level, but yeah. It starts off with just one little website. Where is it? Where is it? Right here. It starts off with just one little guy who can. MySpace. And then, suddenly they have someone who can do it better. They get competitors. Their competitors get competitors. People find other things they like in that same, social media, but done a little bit differently, right? YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter are not really comparable as websites. They're all offering different things, but they're all social media. I would argue, what is this one maybe at the bottom? Xvideos, OnlyFans, and even you could throw in Instagram for a little bit. They offer similar stuff, but they're widely different platforms. So people might go to all these websites for the same reason. So yeah, sorry. That's all. Anyway, that's all I really had to talk about today. If you guys have any other questions or anything you want to talk about, please let me know in the chat. That's all. I'm going to do for another few minutes to hang out with you guys just because it feels good to be back. Haven't been back in a while, and I am kind of happy. And that's about it. Yeah. There's I guess I'll talk a little bit about some things I've been keeping an eye on as well. I guess I don't even know if I can talk. It's one of the reasons why, honestly, I've been off YouTube for a while. Is there's a very interesting story going on right now out of Florida, in which a whistleblower into Florida's accounting of COVID cases might not have been so truthful in her accounts. It's a very fascinating story, but it's one of those things you kind of never know which you're allowed to talk about anymore. Just because it's kind of opaque, and it changes, right? It's one of the reasons why I'm kind of glad I was off the platform more or less during the past couple of years, because you know what? Let's do a great example right here. Great example. It's a very tragic story. It's not something that's, good, but oh, thank you, Wall Street Journal. Whatever. This is basically more or less what I'm talking about anyway, so I'll just show you this. So, the Wall Street Journal ran this headline. They don't say when they ran it, but it was updated today. And we'll get into why it was updated today. But it says, an abortion story too good to confirm. Biden told a tale of a 10-year-old victim that no one can identify. Now, turns out that today, the editor's note here describes it. And again, I'm not going to I don't want to pay them to read the whole thing, but the Columbus Dispatch reported Wednesday, a day after this editorial was published, that a Columbus, Ohio man has been charged with the crime against an Ohio girl who traveled to Indiana for an abortion. Dispatch reports that Columbus police were made aware of the pregnancy through a referral to a local child service, yada, 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 right? So it's a story too good to confirm. Though it gets confirmed the next day. And we are moving more and more and more and more and more and more into that kind of climate, right? Where you can very, very confidently declare something on Tuesday, and on Wednesday you will be proven very wrong. And, so if you think back over the past few years of some of the, some similar topics, some stuff that was like that as well, it's kind of what we're heading into, right? I think it's one of the reasons why I talked about this yesterday. It's one of the reasons why a lot of people kind of get politically programmed. Again, it's not like they don't brainwash people for life, but a lot of people are getting politically programmed to really jump to a conclusion and stick to it immediately before giving any thought, before waiting at all. And just, the more and more we see it, the more and more it looks like this, right? The more and more it's a story too good to confirm until it literally gets confirmed the next day. Because this right here, by the way, this is a very, 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 very minor statement compared to what some people were doing. Some people were running with this for the past 3 or 4 days, saying all kinds of crazy stuff. Now, both for and against, I believe a fact checker fact-checked this is probably true because the president said it with no sources. So there was reasons to doubt the legitimacy of it, but reasons to doubt and running out there and showing your whole ass stories like this are two different things. And it's, it's something that I was really not monitoring, but something I was just seeing happen in real time every single day over the past few years. And again, part of me, a busy life came up. There's other reasons. Part of the reason why I kind of stepped away for a while was the political climate in this country was reaching a very weird place, but now it's at a point where I think we need to talk about the political climate, right? That's what's most important, is the fact that if enough people are at least talking about the fact that things are getting crazy and they want a way out, it's going to increase the likelihood of finding one, It's going to increase the likelihood that we will get to a point where there's enough people who aren't... I think there's also this idea that if people talk about, like, centrists are in the middle, right? But it's like... I think centrism and being in the middle are not the same things at all, right? I feel like centrism... And but my larger point is this. The right and the left are setting where they are, and the center of that is relevant to them, right? So if the right moves very far right and the left moves very, very far left, then the center would be pretty moderate. But let's say the right moves pretty far right and the left follows them a little bit right. Well, then being in the center would put you, or being in the middle of those two would put you a little bit closer to the right? And I think if the two political parties do move far enough away from each other, I think that middle grows, is my point. And if they keep moving as far as they're moving, that middle could grow to a large enough size where it encompasses more people than there is on the other sides. So, just a little white pill right there. Is that people are crazy. Things are getting not great. We're in a very weird social time, but there is a chance that the political weirdos push a little bit too hard and they really do just leave everyone else stuck in the middle with nowhere to go. But is that, you know what? I will start using the Discord more again. That was something that I definitely neglected a bit over the year. Yeah, God, over the years. It's crazy to say that. Over the years that we started this. But yeah, I'll definitely be on that more, getting more active again. Just kind of, trying to spread some white pills and just kind of, something positive. Right? I know it sounds a little bit doom and gloom. It's not great that we might be stuck having a guy that 18% of people want on the ballot again. It's not a great place to be in. But there is a way out. I do believe it. I do believe there's a way out for this country that is preferable, right? It's one of the reasons why, again, things like ranked choice voting, things like just larger representation for independent political parties. I think that also maybe needs to be just a little aside, almost like a marketing thing, right? Is the idea that I don't think third parties, I don't think is the correct term. I really do think the more correct term is independent parties. parties unaffiliated with the Democratic and Republican, the large major national organizations, right? A more independent party, I think, is a better way of looking at it. Because a lot of people don't mind being independents. A lot of people are registered as independents already. We wouldn't have to completely upend our political system even to just have parties that fall under the umbrella of independent. People can just register as independent and then vote for any one of the independent parties they want for, as including both major parties. There we go. So I think that Yang is a centrist or a moderate. I think using the definition of a moderate of being someone who is, again, a little bit less reacting to where the two parties are and more just trying to keep themselves a little bit stationary. Yeah, I think Yang is more of a political moderate, which is funny for someone who, wants to upend the way our election systems are and, add universal basic income and stuff like that. But you'll notice when it comes to application, I think the big thing is here. You'll notice Andrew Yang will talk about big ideas, things that are, going to be big, wide changes, universal basic income, various, changes the way we vote, adding multiple parties to the ballot that aren't there. But you'll notice when it comes to the procedure of it, he isn't somebody who's like, we need radical fundamental change. We have to flip the table, get rid of everything today. He's definitely someone who takes a more moderate approach, where he's like, look, we have to get there in a way that doesn't disrupt things too much. My stance, at least, I think. I have not actually talked about the Forward Party yet. But I think it seems viable. I think, kind of speaking to what I was talking about with Yang as far as how I see him politically, where he does want to make change, but he's not looking to upend the system completely in a way that is, confrontational to people. So I think it's kind of just more moderate, right? Like, I feel like people that are kind of more moderates, they will have more radical opinions. They're just willing to temper the way they get there, right? It's not, I think a good example of this, right, just as an aside, right? There's nothing moderate about defund the police, right? Nothing moderate about that. No. You could, as a moderate, say you want, regulations, different, changing the way that certain things are. What is it? Qualified immunity. Like, there is a moderate way of working towards some of those same goals. Defunding the police is not the moderate way of doing it, right? Even if it is, I would not say defund the, moving to remove qualified immunity, increase police scrutiny. I would not call those right-wing or centrist positions, right? Those are pretty left-wing positions, but there's a moderate way to approach it and a kind of like gung-ho way to approach it, I guess, is largely what I'm trying to talk about, if that makes sense. And as far as whether the Forward Party is viable, I don't necessarily think the Forward Party is going to be like, have 40 members of Congress or something. But I think as a, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like a trailblazer, like as a party that is actually firmly dedicated. They're not like libertarians or Greens that want to just be in the club with the Democrats and Republicans or just give people an extra option. Like, the Forward Party is very much interested in just opening up elections everywhere, more so than necessarily getting their people in, which I think is noble and good. Again, kind of more to the idea of a moderate versus, a more aggressive approach to things. I think he's a kind of moderate approach to things. If we go to states and just influence them to open their primaries up, even if it doesn't mean we're on the ballot and we're winning seats, it doesn't matter. The point of this movement is to open up these primaries, open up these elections, open up these ballots. Because also, there's a little bit of the argument of just the removal of temptation, right? Where if the ballots are open, and it's not as easy for Democrats and Republicans to just remove names from them, right? Like, they can deny you running as a Democrat, but if the ballots open up to where they can't deny you running, period. In local elections, statewide elections, countywide elections, you can win without a party on popularity alone. Some of these races, you look at the amount of votes people get when they win, it's not that many. If you're bigger than the local Democrats, bigger than the local Republicans, you could win without needing their help. It's getting on the ballot and actually procedurally getting far enough that is the issue. And if you can just, break down those barriers, you'll see more. Again, it's one of the things to keep in mind. Andrew Yang's Forward Party could be successful, and it could look like literal KKK parties in the South and like radical communist parties in the North that have like representatives with the assembly and stuff. That's what it could look like, It's important to keep in mind that opening things up to more people means opening things up to more people. However, I still believe that goal is noble. That goal is good. That goal helps more people than it hurts. Because I do not believe we're going to see a massive emergence of actual, Marxist communist parties and KKK parties running around attacking their political rivals. I don't think we're going to see that. I think what we're more going to see is it will mess with the market for Democrats and Republicans, right? Because here's the thing right now, too. Democrats and Republicans are offering businesses and wealthy people who invest in politics stuff, you know? Like, honestly, this is a great example right here. I mean, let me go back to this. This is a great example of what I'm talking about. Was it this one? There we go. Look at it, right here. Like, read what Donald Trump said here. So when Elon Musk came to the White House asking me for help in all of his many subsidized projects, whether it's electric cars that don't drive long enough, driverless cars that crash, or rocket ships to nowhere, without which subsidies he'd be worthless, and telling me how he was a big Trump fan or Republican, I would have said drop to your knees and beg, and he would have done it. So what if instead of there being just the Democrats and the Republicans who, you know, have the checkbooks to write these fat subsidies? By the way, this happens in states too. Elon's big enough where he goes to the president to get the big national subsidies. But when you're running for local office, this is the kind of dirty politics that influence things, right? If the people that have been in power for 15 years are very friendly with the largest industry in the county, they're probably going to stay in power. But adding more parties to that list, you could basically have local Democratic or Republican parties that are just like, we're for Republicans, but we're going to be more friendly to certain industries. And it makes it so it's not so much take it or leave it, right? There's ways to have more leeway. Once again, doesn't necessarily mean the best thing for all of us, right? It might be that we just have politicians bidding against each other to give more money to businesses. It might look like that. It might look like politicians in some cities bidding against themselves to build a football stadium so they get a football team and use tax dollars for it, which nobody wants to be used. It could look like that. But I think that is where you kind of get out of just the idea of there being another party on the ballot, what this looks like. It also means that if these parties grow enough in money and influence and size, it's another business in town, right? It's someone else who says, hey, if you help me get elected, I will offer you this. Because right now, you can be in some deep red areas. Say, I'm offering you this, buddy. The Democrats will never win, so you have to take it. Like Trump said right here, drop to your knees and beg. But if you have more parties, you could have deep red areas with parties that 100% adhere to the values of the people in the area, but will play hardball with local businesses. And they can make that pitch. They can say, look, I'm just as Republican as any of you are, but the current Republicans are selling us out. I want to do everything they're doing, but just not sell us out. Right? That's a positive. That could happen. Again, the inverse could happen, where they could, behind the scenes, be fighting to give more money to get the support they need. But it's kind of the same idea, though, of just breaking the stranglehold the two parties have. Because when these two parties have a stranglehold, again, getting back to the main topic of this, you have a president who gets in office and his approval rating erodes. 18% of people want him to realign. His own party is saying, you know what, maybe he shouldn't run for re-election. However, everybody knows you can't actually run against him. It's political suicide. Everyone knows as long as the big guy says he's running, and you're not going to stop him, because that's the way the party works. You don't get here because it's a democracy. You get here because there's only two. This is what binary choice looks like. Looks like this. You know, it's not even people talk about the lesser of two evils. It's not about lesser of two evils. It's about the choices you're given are relevant to you and your opinions. Those people are on the ballot not for your interests, not because you want them there. Those names make it to ballots because they're helping other people do stuff that aren't you. Like, by the time you get the ballot, there was no consideration if you care who's on it or not. It's just either exercise your voice, right? Or don't. Even if exercising your voice is picking between, you know, pre-decided topics, right? Even though it's like you never really had a choice in the first place. Still, if you don't exercise your choice, you know, you're giving up your democracy. But yeah, so I'm just catching up with chat here a little bit. I mean, Marianne Yang definitely is more to the left than to the right. I think here's the thing. Andrew Yang becoming a major proponent for breaking these two-party systems, it comes from the fact that he is a Democrat. He probably is truly a Democrat. The problem is the Democratic Party is not at all representative of what Democrats want at all. Again, and they don't even care. They don't even care. The 41% of people say the Democratic president, 41% of Democrats say shouldn't be running for another term. But they're probably going to force him in there anyway, right? Like, we're not seeing massive calls from inside the Democratic Party to remove him. They're mostly rallying the wagons. Gavin Newsom, today, emphatically, Joe Biden should run. Sorry, just checking this. Emphatically, he is saying that we should disregard the will of 80% of the country. We should disregard the will of the plurality of Democrats that responded to the majority that responded to this, one poll, but probably the majority of Democrats in period. Their will is pointless. Joe should run. And the problem is you have people that don't love the idea that Joe Biden should run again, but are still Democrats. I mean, recently I was talking to a family member. One of my family members are more conservative, and they were talking about how they had some friends who were like lifelong Democrats who were just talking about how they were unhappy with the Democratic Party. And so my family member was trying to, kind of preach them preach to them about Republicans and the people running in Republicans. And they came back to him and said, I just don't like any of the Republicans. Like, I don't like any of these people. I don't want to vote for any of them. And it's because these people are Democrats. Like, there's no reason why they shouldn't be voting for Democrats. Their policies align with what the Democratic Party claims to be representing. And they find themselves on the out. They find themselves looking at local Republicans and going like, I don't want anything these people want. What? Like, I thought I was a Democrat, but my party's not representing me, so I guess I'm a Republican. But then I go to the Republicans and I'm like, these people suck too. It's because they are still Democrats. The party just doesn't care what they want. And we're seeing a lot of people like that. I think Andrew Yang is a great example of that. He probably is a Democrat. The only problem is Democratic Party doesn't care about the voters at the moment. So it doesn't matter that he is a Democrat. They will alienate him like they are many other voters, but then those voters look to the right and they're like, well, I mean, I guess I'm not a Democrat anymore. I guess I'm a Republican then, right? Because we have these two choices. It's binary. There is no nuance. If I'm on the outs with Democrats, I'm going into being a Republican. But then they look into it and say, I want nothing Republicans want. If this person wins, I'll be unhappy with what they're doing. Not in everything, but a lot of the social stuff I don't like. How am I going to vote for them? However, I can't in good faith vote for the Democrats either. And it's this really weird, kind of like, I don't know the word, not a crisis of conscience, but it's this weird place for people to be in, where they're like, they know, generally speaking, where they stand in the political spectrum. They know what they like, they know what they think they align with, and they're just not seeing it done at all by the people claiming to want to do it. And so it's only natural then to think, well, I guess the other people are going to help me. But no, they aren't either. And yeah, it leaves people in this weird middle ground. It leaves people in a position where they feel like voting for a president they don't like because, well, at least he's a Democrat. But then he wins and they're like, well, Democrats suck. I guess I'm not a Democrat. So it's kind of one of the problems with, it's one of the ways this binary system of only having these two choices for everything, it kind of it trickles down, It helps create this divide amongst people because it feels like there's like a lot of different separate political factions, even though there's supposed to only be two big ones. But people with underneath those umbrellas, underneath the Republican Democratic umbrella, they don't necessarily feel represented. So they're kind of like hanging out in the middle. Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, the fact that talking about now Gavin Newsom potentially running for president, he is one of the absolute, like, Gavin Newsom making it to the ballot for president would be one of the most, like, would be proof that America has a ruling class more than anything. Like, it'd be proof that there is royalty in America. Most people are just born into it. Some people can get there without it, which is how royalty worked actually in a lot of countries where you could, over generations kind of get in one way or another. But Gavin Newsom's aunt Nancy Pelosi has been one of the most powerful Democrats in the world for many, many, many years. And Gavin Newsom is a corrupt himbo, basically. I will never be able to see Gavin Newsom. And maybe this is my prejudice and my bias. I will never be able to see him as anything other than this. Oh, great. I love the resolution. Let me get the high resolution for you guys. This is how I will always see him. This is Gavin Newsom. Literal royalty. He looks like a regular guy to you in this photo. You look like someone you have anything in common with in this photo. I love the see if I can get the caption up there for you guys. Sprawled on Ann Getty's rug in San Francisco for a photo in Harper's Bazaar. Could you imagine that? The fact that people are even floating around that this guy could be on the presidential ballot, right? Again, is, one of the most powerful Democrats in the world. Literally one of the most powerful left-wing politicians in the entire world. Nancy Pelosi. Third in line or fourth in line to be president. And here he is, shooting for, a fashion magazine, a rich people, high-class fashion magazine. Sprawled out on Ann Getty's rug of the Getty family. And what looks like almost like Catalina Island, but I have no idea where that is. Maybe not Catalina, but anyway. I mean, this is what having a ruling class looks like. Right? Because keep in mind, Gavin Newsom recently went on vacation to Montana. Let's look at this one. Kind of gets to what I was talking about yesterday, too, is that a lot of people kind of circle the wagons a little bit too much when it comes to some people circle the wagons a little bit too much when they see a Democrat, right? But it's important. When you hear Gavin Newsom's a Democrat, and people are like, well, I like Democrats. Republicans are probably just talking bad about Democrats. This guy is a member of the royal family that rules over this country more or less. He is not just some random Democrat deserving of your sympathy and a fair shake of things. He's gladfully been screwing people over and stealing from them in office for many, many years. And very recently, and this is actually specifically why I want to bring up this website, because again, this kind of gets to what I was talking about yesterday, is this idea that a lot of people would see this, Breitbart, throw it out. Don't even have to read it. It's Breitbart. Fake news. It's made up. Republican smear, none of this is real. None of this is real. It's all fake. It's all made up. Now keep in mind, Breitbart does post a lot of stuff that's been proven to be embellished or a lot more opinion-laden than they might want to lead on, or outright false. But let's just read the article and see if this one is. They claim that Newsom's spokesperson admits the state paid for his security and travel to banned Montana. Let's see what that is. So, a Breitbart News report earlier this week, Cal Matters reporter Emily Hoven reported that Newsom was vacationing in Montana where his wife, Jennifer Seibel Newsom, is a family ranch. Oh, wow. So relatable, the family ranch in Montana. However, Montana is one of nearly 24 states on a state travel ban due to the fact that it recently passed legislation protecting women's sports from the involvement of biological men who identify as transgender women. Again, without getting into that debate, a little bit hypocritical that he'd show up to that state. You could almost argue it's hypocritical to have a family ranch in the state if you're going to ban people from going there. So Newsom's office told Fox News that he was not violating the travel ban because his travel was personal. How lucky for him. I guess when you're better than other people, it's personal, However, when asked whether any state funds are being spent to provide the governor with security and other support during his trip, the governor's office declined to answer. Newsom's been known to violate his own rules before, as we know. And then the Times reported that Anthony York denied that Newsom's office is being coy about his whereabouts and said the office trying to balance transparency with safety. On the security side, the law explicitly states there's an exemption from public safety and the governor has to travel with security. Because again, remember, this guy's better than you. He has to have security when he travels to states that he says you can't travel to because it's a personal trip. I'm going to my wife's family ranch. This is like the fact that we're in a political climate where hard-working, working-class Democrats feel the need to defend someone like this because he's a Democrat. It's just, it's like the peasants being like, well, the aristocrats work real hard. If only the king was here, he would stop these local barons from what they're doing. The monarchy would never allow this. It's the local baron. It's the landlords out here, the owners. They're corrupt. When in reality, it's like all these people are working against you. They don't care at all. Again, people don't like Breitbart News, but how many of these excuses do you think would be acceptable if the positions were flipped, right? Travel to a state that you're not supposed to be traveling to, and you go, well, you see, it was a personal reason. My family owns a ranch. I think most people give that considerations. Oh, I apologize. I didn't realize it was a personal trip because your family owned a ranch. I didn't realize that. Now that we know that, the state taxpayers should be paying for your security when you go. Because who knows? When you're at your family's ranch in Montana, someone might try to come and hurt you for some reason. You know, a lot of people just hanging out in rural Montana, right? I feel like, I don't know Montana that well. I feel like you'll probably see him coming in Montana if you're on your own property, right? You'll probably notice people that are somewhere they shouldn't be, right? Also, Gavin Newsom, I have a feeling this guy's independently wealthy. I mean, if he's on a personal trip, I don't think it's so crazy to say that his security should have been personally funded, right? Because hey, for whatever reason he was on an official California state trip to Montana, I wouldn't bat an eye if the taxpayers paid his security if he's doing the job, right? If his job is to go to Montana for some reason, it's his job. Yeah, why shouldn't, like, the security is there to protect him when he does his job, and he's doing his job. But, you know, his own people argued, well, he wasn't doing his job. That's why he was allowed to go, you see. You see, he wouldn't have been allowed to go if it was official business. Sorry, I'm ranting on this a bit, but it's like, this is some of the stuff that is very, 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 very annoying to me that I see in our current political climate, right? Regular, everyday, hardworking people will feel the need to defend this guy because Breitbart News said that the taxpayers shouldn't have paid for his security, right? So they'll circle the wagons to defend this guy. The dude sitting on Ann Getty's rug back in 2004 in his Harper's Bazaar piece. Overlooking, you know, again, some bay somewhere. Oh, yeah, San Francisco. I'm an idiot. Catalina Island. Yeah, the San Francisco Bay. That's why I shaped that way. Sorry. A little bit of California geography, or a little bit of American geography right there. Yeah. You know? But again, you could have fooled me. You could have told me this somewhere in Italy. And I would have been like, yeah, it looks like some, you know, palatial estate in Italy. Looks beautiful. Looks gorgeous. It looks like a building nicer than anyone I will ever be welcomed into in my entire life. I will never be able to lay in a rug like this. And most people won't, right? Doesn't mean you're like a peasant. It's just, this is some high-class stuff, man. Most people don't make it into Harper's Bazaar. Regular people don't get there. But if you're handsome, connected, part of pseudo-royalty, life's different for you. Life's different for you. Well, I mean, like, here's the thing, right? Like, as far as Montana being let's look more into that, right? Let's look more into him, you know, the Montana thing, but I guess no, I don't want to go too far into that. But what I mean is, you'll notice here, when they talk about why Montana is one of the 24 states. By the way, 24 is another way of saying half the country, right? Or nearly 24 is roughly half the states in the country. Like, do you really think it's tenable to have a travel ban on half the states or 43% of the states in the country or whatever? Is that a legitimate, serious, tenable position you can hold? No. That's the kind of thing that just does not stand up to reality at all. It just doesn't. Because again, if it was serious, people would have been saying, well, why don't you sell the property you have there? If people aren't even allowed to travel there because their political policies are so atrocious, why do you have property there? Why do you pay for local stuff? You know, well, it's his wife's family, so I guess, you know, wife's family's off limits, but it's also like, really? Like, we're really going to pretend that, like, and again, he's not even pretending. That's the funny thing. See, he doesn't have to pretend. Gavin Newsom? Nah. He gets to just go. He just goes. And when people ask him about it, they just say, I don't know, it was a personal thing. That's why he was able to do it. Yeah, it was personal. He wasn't violating it because it's a personal trip. Which, I mean, again, just speaks to the fact that it's obviously not a real life thing you can do. Just for, what, indefinitely? Just indefinitely have, like, restrictions on dealing business with half the states in the country? Is that really something that can happen? But again, it's, you know, that's what the peasants hear. And then the royalty, they get to go to their ranch. We don't, but they do. All right, sorry. Like I said, I went off a little bit on that one, but it's Again, it is one of the most frustrating things to me about the current political system. It's the way that they get people to defend people who don't care about them at all. Right? Like, I have a very hard time believing Gavin Newsom cares about it. Because again, I'm showing you this, but like, Gavin Newsom has done so much just, I'm in a different class than you, you don't understand kind of things during his time as a politician in California, right? When he was the mayor of San Francisco and then moving into the governorship. I mean, so much stuff he's done where he's just like, you don't get it. I'm better than you. That's why I'm allowed to do it. By the way, they defend me against other people. You know, run out there and say Breitbart's fake news so the story doesn't matter. Don't even, people on social media post a link to this. You just go, Fox News, obvious lies. Just defend him. Defend this man because he cares about you so much. Sorry. I need to move on. It's very distressing. But it's also one of the reasons why it's really important that we continue to try to get more like-minded, independent people, more people who, because I think it's kind of one of the other, parts of having a moving towards breaking the stranglehold these two parties have. The biggest thing is the way you meet in the middle or find people in the independent area. I guess that's the other reason I like saying independent more than the middle, right? Because you can be unaffiliated with the Democrats, but mostly lean left on stuff, and you could be unaffiliated with the Republicans and mostly lean right. There's this perception today that you can't. That's not the way things actually work. If you're leaning to the right, you're a Republican. Leaning to the left, you're a Democrat. Anything else, get out of here. But in reality, no, you don't have to be affiliated with these parties. You don't have to defend Gavin Newsom because he says he cares about left-wing policy. Even if he doesn't really necessarily legislate that way. He does the pop culture stuff. You know what he does? You know what Gavin Newsom does when he is legislating? Gavin Newsom legislates to these people. The well-off social liberals. Gavin Newsom legislates to Democrats that are upscale voters concerned about gun control and abortion. That's who he legislates for. If your life is, currently not comfortable enough to have gun control and abortion be 1 and 2, and you have economic concerns, so the inflation or whatever, if you feel like your wages have stagnated and it doesn't really matter what social stuff's done around you because you can't afford to engage in society in a level where it matters what's going on, right? Like, for example, if you don't feel like you can afford to have kids, maybe the abortion issues will be interesting to you, but there's a lot of stuff that you are more concerned about than other issues. And it's also, by the way, one of the things, I don't want to get too far into this because I understand it's a very heated debate, but it is a little bit interesting how the Democratic Party, the party that seems to, when they get in power, makes everybody poorer, is very, 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 very interested in poor women being able to abort their children instead of raise them because they can't afford to raise them. It's really interesting, huh? Like, you would think Democrats would just be advocating for increased social spending so no young woman feels like she has to abort her child just because she can't afford it. You would think a party interested in that would be more interested in giving people that choice, right? They should say, look, abortion should be legal. You should be allowed to get an abortion if you want. But if funds are what you're concerned about, we can help you there. But no, they're like, yeah, we're going to make you poor as dirt, man. You better abort that thing. You ain't going to be able to raise it. Even though they're supposed to be the party of giving back and helping people, what about mothers who want help raising their child? Nah. You don't get that help. You get different help. And it's, I don't know. It's like it's one of those things where, again, just envision this. Envision this man telling you that you need to get an abortion because you can't afford to raise your child. And when you ask, well, can you help me afford to raise my child? He just says no. The Republicans or something are blocking me. I can't. You just got to abort it. I can't help you. It's like, but I thought you wanted to help people. I thought you wanted to help, people that are on hard times economically. You wanted to lift this up. I guess not. I guess he doesn't actually care that much. I guess he'd rather fight for your right to get an abortion than he would fight for increased social programs to make it easier for you to have the child. Because again, if people want to have an abortion for other reasons, health reasons, even if for whatever reason they're just like, you know what, doesn't line up with my life plan. You don't have to ban those. Just the small percentage of people who really do feel like it's just 100% economic strain, why not help them? Why not? Is it because they don't care? Maybe. Maybe that's why. Maybe it's because there's just a bunch of rich, out-of-touch people that lead these parties that don't care. Maybe to them it's a lot easier to just dump them in the garbage than it is to pay for them after they're bored. So that's what they prefer to do. It's one of the things that, again, regardless of your position on the abortion debate, it is very, very, very striking the fact that the Democratic Party, and I'm not saying they ignore 1,000%, but when like the rubber hits the road, they really aren't pushing for that much. Instead of just saying no mother should feel like she can't afford to raise her child, they say no mother should feel like she can't afford to have her child, so she should be aborted. Not we should help her pay for whatever it is. Come on, like childcare, like this is all stuff that exists in other countries. Like other countries, these European countries people love pointing to as bastions of left wing. They have things like increased maternity leave. They have things like daycare to help with, like they have things to help young women who have kids that maybe couldn't afford them otherwise. They have those exist widely, and they're used for that reason. So yeah, sorry again. I gotta take this picture down. Just looking at him is like drives me crazy. I don't live in California anymore, but I lived in California for many years, and just seeing how this stuff happened up close and personal like that was something else. Anyway, I'll hang out for a few more minutes here. Did I talk about the pregnant lady using the carpool lane? Technically, 2 people. She still has to go to court. I think that is where, again, another kind of interesting ripple of it. But yeah, I honestly think that's a really. You know what? I'm gonna make a really radical out there stance, guys. You ready for this? You ready for some radical stuff right here? I think if pregnant women want to use carpool lanes so they don't have to sit in traffic, that's fine. Regardless of your position on abortions. If you're for them or against them. I think allowing pregnant women to use carpool lanes so they spend less time in traffic is totally fine. Right? If a pregnant woman has to be driving herself around town all the time, sure. I have no problem temporarily for 9 months seating some, social, like helping out pregnant women when they're doing stuff like driving their cars on roads. Call me crazy, but I think that should just be what they do. And to get to, being a little bit less like, sarcastic about it, there is the legitimate issue of like what, like if you don't look pregnant, they're going to pregnancy test you, right? But again, if it means that more young women are just driving in the carpool lane, even though they aren't technically pregnant or with someone else, I would say that's the kind of thing we can let run until it proves to be an issue, right? If the carpool lane just becomes at a standstill because any woman can just use it without having, and then it is an issue, maybe that has to be readdressed. I just don't think that would happen. I think most people just kind of follow rules, especially if most people understand the reason why that rule existed was to help pregnant women. I think they would, on some level, realize that if they're taking advantage of that, they are hurting pregnant women in a way. So, but that's that. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, I'm still recovering a little bit from something. But see, any opinions on the Arizona elections? Not a ton. Arizona's a weird state, man. Like, politically, Arizona's a weird... I know that. I mean, you have the farthest right, I believe, member of Congress is in Arizona. I know they currently have that woman running for, I believe it's governor, right? But, yeah, for people who don't know, the man who represents the 4th District of Arizona, and we'll show you where the 4th District of Arizona is in a minute as well, is a dentist, correct? DDS, I believe he's a dentist by name of Paul Kosar. And he is an Arizona person. So let's look at, where's the issues? Key issues. Right. I love reading through, I'm on the wrong tab. I love reading through these key issues, though, on a politician's website, because without even actually going into them, where is it? There. You can typically get an idea about just like the topics they use, right? So let's see. Agriculture challenging the status quo. Shall like it right here. This looks like mostly just general Republican stuff. But anyway, the reason why I brought that up is because there's also parts of Arizona that are not very Republican, and there are some more blue parts of Arizona. So it's a really weird state. But also, let's look at the 4th District of Arizona. Only because this is really the extent of my, like, large opinions of Arizona politics, is just the fact that it's a really weird, kind of diverse political area. So we're for, there we go. It is a very geographically pretty large. I mean, it looks like it almost touches into Arizona Nevada in some parts. But it's got a population of about 1 million people and all that stuff, right? But I mean, keep in mind, like, as of 2013, like, it basically represents a very large portion of the state. So I guess there's no way to bring it up. What seems to be largely rural. I'm almost positive it's very close to, yeah. I am right here. This is what I think is crazy. I am in Nevada, and I am right here. And this is all in the 4th Congressional District, which is ran over by Paul Gosar. So, but then also you have parts of Phoenix stuff that are a lot more blue. So, interesting state politically. I don't have too many opinions about it. Just the fact that I know it's a very weird state politically. There's a lot of kind of stuff on both sides. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. And the senator is Kristen Sinema. Right? Okay. Like, it's a very bizarre state politically. It was a Democrat, but she's the one always fighting the Democrats. You know what? I don't like to do this very often, but just to kind of like toot my own horn a little bit. I don't know if any of you guys in chat were here, but the day or two, like, once the 2020 election results kind of like got crystallized a couple days after, maybe even the next day, it was like once the Democrats found out they had a tie in the Senate and all that, I did a live stream and I was talking about the fact that the Democrats are set up for failure for this term here. Like, they were in a terrible spot. They have very slim majorities, and it'll only take 1 or 2 senators to make that Senate majority non-existent. And I would say it wasn't the biggest brain prediction of all time, but more or less that's exactly what happened. All right. And I mean, sometimes though, I do know sometimes parties will use people like Sinema and Manchin to kind of be like, ah, shoot, we wanted to give you guys what we wanted, but, you know, these meanies, they just don't listen to us. We did want to do it. We did. But, you know, Kristen Sinema, she's the most powerful person in the world. We can't stand up to her. Well, what do you want us to do? She said no. Like, that's why I feel like sometimes they keep these people around to do that, you know? Or it's like they don't necessarily want to do something. And so some people like Sinema and some people like Manchin. I honestly, I feel like with Sinema the most, I feel like Sinema's the kind of person who just doesn't care. She's like, look, if I have to be the bad guy, if people have to hate me and blame me to, you know, keep things going the way the party wants them to go, whatever, I don't care. She doesn't seem like one of those people who's going to shy away from it. Most people going to be crying in her milkshake. She's like, I can't believe they don't like me. But most people are like, I don't care what they like. I don't care what they want. No, I don't want it. But again, sometimes they're playing ball a lot more than it looks like. I mean, it's kind of like hilarious too when you think about it, right? She replaced Jeff Flake, who was, I believe, the Republican nobody liked, right? So it's like you have this Flake Republican that gets replaced by this Democrat who just doesn't care at all. I guess, again, kind of speaking to Arizona politics, right? You have like the ultra MAGA Paul Gosar representing half the state congressionally, and then their senator is a Democrat who has no problem just looking at all like the Democrat voters and going no, or not the voters, but the rest of the Senate. Nah, I'm not going to do it. It is telling, though, how reluctant the Democrats in the Senate seem to be to make deals, right? It isn't very... When Sinema and Manchin say no on something, that's basically it, right? There's been very few times that I know, in like very high-profile instances, where Sinema and Manchin were the two dissenters, and we saw some politicking happen. Some give and some take, and kind of get to a position where one of them will come around. It's happened a couple times, but suspiciously little. Because at a certain point, you play your hand too much. Yeah, just You're in Senate for 6 years, but eventually, let's say the Senate moves a little bit, right? Let's say Democrats find themselves in a minority. Suddenly, senators like this aren't that useful anymore, right? Like, she's really going to be just left voting on party lines or kind of like ostracized from the party. Even if right now she's kind of useful because she lets the Democrats pretend they can't do stuff they actually can do. If things shift, stuff shifts. That's why normally you want to be getting as much as you can when you're a good little soldier, you know? When you're like, I'll go up there, you blame me, say I'm the one saying no, even though there isn't that, even though a lot of people, for example, one of the first political terms I heard talking to people that served in office a little bit was the concept of lifeboating a politician, right? And the idea is, if you have a big enough majority to get a vote, let's say you have certain people that are in your party, but they represent areas that are a little bit less deep red or deep blue, right? Like, let's say your Republican Party is a supermajority, and there's some people that represent more kind of like suburban or even like urban red areas that they're Republican, but there is still a lot of kind of like, you know, they're a little bit more on like the socially left side, but like the socially liberal, fiscal conservative, that classic, right? Sometimes they'll do what's called lifeboating, and they'll say, look, you could vote against on this bill. We don't care. Like, we want you to vote against on this bill because we don't need your vote for it to pass. And it will kind of win you brownie points with your constituents. It'll show your constituents you will stand up to the party, even though you're not, because the bill passes anyway. And it's a great way to kind of monitor perception, right? Kind of manipulate the perception of things. Even though behind closed doors, this is all cool. They're like, please vote against us. We need that. We need it to look like we still have some diversity in this party. We have people that are willing to represent the other kind of like the more socially liberal wings. Even though we're only letting you do this because we don't need your vote. So the reason you brought it up was the Mark Kelly, if he will lose his race to Masters, who's much more right-wing than McSally. And also the governor's race is pretty interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of at that. I'm kind of, part of the reason why I'm coming back and doing more streaming and stuff is, yeah, I'm starting to kind of gear up into more of the election season. But at the moment, I will admit, I'm a little bit, for like the upcoming electioneering stuff, I have not been following as closely. However, like I said, it is one of the things about Arizona. Like, I do know that it's where I live. You know, I live a couple hundred miles away from the state. So while it doesn't impact me, it's just going on kind of in my backyard. So I keep a little bit of an eye on it. But it is definitely one of the more, I think, interesting kind of breakdown. Because like you mentioned, like, you have somebody who is, you know, Mark Kelly, the astronaut, right? Isn't that Mark Kelly? The astronaut, right? Yeah. He's only been there since 2018. And Cinema has only been there since 2019. So, yeah, like it is definitely worth pointing out the fact that these are people that haven't been here forever, and it's kind of a moving situation. But beyond that, that's all I've looked into it. I know that Arizona is kind of a fluid state when it comes to what you see. There's, again, 2 sitting Democratic senators with one of the most ultra MAGA congressmen representing like half the state. So it's very weird diversity. I know that. That's about it. Will I be streaming with the Base Mormon again? I can't promise it 100% yet, but maybe you'll be seeing him this weekend. Because unfortunately, so I am ramping up. I'm going to be doing this a lot more. I am unfortunately going to be out of town for a few days. So I will not be streaming for a few days. I'm going to try to make it so I can have uploads, because I do want to just get back into daily stuff. Just don't want to get back into it. But I will be out of town in California. And so if I can get Carden to sit down long enough, I will. I am trying to get him to do a stream. Again, can't promise anything yet. Again, it's not confirmed. With Carden, I never know. But I will actually be in the old Problem Solver Politics studio this weekend. And so I am going to try to get him on there. Oh my God. Also, I've just read. I don't know why when I read Masters, I didn't think about who that was, but yes, I forgot about Blake Masters. So I mean, this right here, I'm kind of, you know, we're well into the post show here. I'm kind of just doing my, you know, my research live with you guys. But again, I love to pull up these people. I think this right here, the landing page for BlakeMasters.com, right? There's one thing that stands out about it, right? There's one thing you just can't miss. Jumps off the page at you. And, you know, what is he most proud of? Even, Look, his kids and his wife are in the background. Foreground is that he's Trump endorsed, baby. So let's go through the master's plan. Because I've definitely been loosely following Blake Masters and what he's doing. I just didn't put two and two together when you brought it up. So again, I'm just going to kind of go through this. Democrats in power failed us. They delivered chaos at our border, skyrocketing inflation, failing schools, and widespread wokeness. Damn, first paragraph, he's dropping wokeness. They've quickly made America dangerous and unaffordable. Think they feel bad about it, but they don't. They want it this way. It's by design. An unholy alliance between big government, big tech, and big business threatens to permanently upend America as we know it. The left believes that our country is fundamentally and irredeemably evil. That's why they denounce it, loot it, and are rushing to make it unrecognizable. It's a sad truth, but this ruling class has given up on America. Again, this state currently has 2 Democratic senators. But I also believe, as you pointed out, that Blake Masters, I don't think is polling that bad. Let me pull that up as well. Because I think if he's the kind of guy, if he makes it to the ballot, it's, again, remember, Gozar represents half the country, half the state almost. Maybe not population, but like, you know, a very large, one of the large districts is represented by Ultra MAGA. And you have him right here, Blake Masters. I'm a Christian, husband, father, businessman, gun owner, and an early member of President Trump's MAGA movement. Grew up in Arizona, and I hate what's happening to it. Put my business career on hold to run for U.S. Senate. Because I uniquely understand the modern threats we face today. Know how to fight against them, I know how to win. God willing, and with your help, inshallah, I'm going to beat Democrat Mark Kelly this November. And together, we're going to make Arizona and America safe, prosperous, and free. And then I believe published just a few days ago, I think this is local, yeah, it's like channel azfamily.com. It looks like something Arizona related. Again, I'm just kind of doing just doing my research normally do by myself with you guys. Currently, it appears in some polls he's leading for the Republican nomination, which is interesting. They mentioned this is relatively new development as well, that he is leading a crowded pack in the GOP Senate primary with 25% of responders. Jesus. Some of these local parties. I mean, I guess talking about Arizona is a state with very unique. How many people did they mention that? Like you have 7 people that. How many people have more than 10%? So I guess 3%, 3 people polling over 10% in this primary is a little bit crazy. A little bit. And then, 35% of the voters, I'm sure. So it is interesting, but he's definitely, I mean, this is a kind of, it seems like one of those elections that you can kind of extrapolate a little bit heading into the future, the direction some of the stuff's going in the country. Because, if Proud MAGA, #1, very top, Trump endorsed, flips a blue seat red, that's something to keep an eye on. Even though Arizona is different, it's not your normal state in the sense that there's a lot of states where pretty much a lot of this stuff's. California's probably not going to have a Republican senator anytime soon, right? Like, it's just probably not going to happen. It's just not in that state. But some areas is open. Why are all politicians' websites so? Well, here's the thing. It's cringe to you, but to the people that vote for them, this is what they want to see. Not always. Some of these websites are bad and don't work. But for the most part, it's what people want, People, it's and especially, I would say, especially in states like Arizona, that it is wide open. You kind of, there's the border wall, by the way. You kind of do have to put your foot down, right? Like in a state that has people that are, left and right, you have to basically make it known who it is you're representing. And Blake Masters makes it known who he's running for. He's running for the Trump-endorsed crowd. Anyone who wants to see Trump endorsements, that's who he's running for. Which kind of brings a little bit into an interesting... I do wonder how important the Trump endorsement will be the closer we get to 2024. Maybe 2022, the Trump endorsement will still matter, but the Republican Party is not this unified front. There's a lot of Republicans. There's a lot of former MAGA people that are good riddance. That's their opinion on Trump. Glad he's gone. They supported him at first. He got in. They thought he was a mess, and they're glad he's out of there. And these are still people who believe in all the MAGA stuff. Their chief complaint was Trump wasn't MAGA, right? Those voters are kind of a larger growing portion of the Republican Party. So, that's also something to keep in mind. I think the thing with the Blake Masters election the most, here's why I'm bringing it up. The thing that, in the little bit I've been following with him, this is what's been fascinating me the most. How far does the Trump endorsement get him? And not just him, but in general. How far are Trump endorsements going to get people in these midterms? Because I'm not convinced in like local settings, right? Like for Congress, Senate, where you're not voting nationally. It's a little bit more, you know who these people are more. I'm interested to see if people care that Trump endorsed these people. I'm interested to see how many states and how many counties still have a lot of Trump loyalist Republicans and not Republicans that felt like Trump failed them. It's funny. It's also in truth, right? One of the reasons why this kind of, like you said, these kind of like cringy political ads, this right here, this little video I've been running in the background, people being too embarrassed to publish something like this about them on like the internet for anyone to see is why most people don't run either, you know? Like some people just, they don't care. They just have confidence or whatever. They just don't care. They don't care if a lot of people are going to look at this and think it's cringy and stupid. They don't care. And that's, you know, again, getting back to cinema, sometimes they make it to the Senate. You just don't care. You know, I mean, especially too, like, I didn't follow Arizona politics super closely, but I do remember how, as someone who didn't follow Arizona politics very closely, I remember hearing Sinema's name as this like progressive, pro-LGBT, like really left, like, you know, a lot of like progressive leftists were like happy with her, and then I don't hear about her again for a while, and then suddenly she's like the meanest Democrat ever. It's like, what? I thought she was like all on board with like a bunch of like progressive stuff. And also, it's like, no. She's the first openly sexual and second openly LGBT woman to be elected to the House of Representatives. The way some Democrats talk about her, she's as bad as Trump. Oh, yeah, the Kari Lake stuff. That. I have, again, I just cursory been paying attention to that stuff, but she is fascinating. She's the one who uses the, God, she uses the TV poster. She looks like the actress, and she uses the poster that actress had for a TV show as like her campaign thing. Let's see if I can find it. Where did it go? I don't see it, but sorry. Just getting back to the idea of kind of like watching going through these campaign websites and kind of how funny. I think it's interesting stuff. Let's go through Kari Lake quickly. So, she has this. Rhino, Karen Taylor Robson's Arizona's most liberal Republican. It's like a flyer. Anti-American. She even supports the transgender bathrooms. She's woke. She's pro-mask mandate. Out of touch. And just cutting a promo on her pro-abortion. Illegal immigrant activist. But the fact that this is how people are campaigning in Arizona, that really does kind of show how look, there's a picture of her and Trump right there, and then the Trump rally. Oh, hey, if you guys are in Arizona, Trump rally on Saturday to support her. So that's interesting. I really, really, really wonder what's going to happen. I mean, here, getting back to this, though. It's getting back to what I was talking about at the very beginning here, if I can find it. Real clear. They got Arizona as a toss-up. It's actually interesting. They have Nevada, right? It was a toss-up for governor. Pretty interesting. But this whole Southwest, which also, though, getting back to my Gavin Newsom hatred and the fact that I've moved out of California, isn't it a little weird that, you know what? Hold on. Come on, people. Anyway, if I can't find it, I'll just bring it up. Haha, I found it. So, let's watch this video. This video is an animated chart showing. Oh my God, what is this? Sorry, there's an ad that's gonna play for a few seconds in the background.
Just from this app on my phone.
Because I don't have.
And I don't know if you can see this, but it's called.
I muted the wrong one.
Okay,
Oh
so
my god, it's a disaster. Anyway, this is like a chart showing where people are moving out of California and to. All right. So where are Californians going when they leave? And you'll notice again using this little key at the bottom. The deeper red the area is, the more people are going there per year. All right, and you'll see people are going all over the country, right? There's 2 areas that on a year-by-year basis are taking in a bunch of Californians. Right? And you'll notice they're showing up in Las Vegas and they're showing up in the Phoenix area, right? And then when we go back to the Real Clear Politics, when they were kind of projecting what they think's going to happen for Senate, House, and Governor, let's look at Nevada and Arizona, the Phoenix and which basically Las Vegas is the people who live in Nevada. There's Reno, which is a much less populated county, and then there's Las Vegas area, right? These are all areas that have, been kind of like Nevada's one of those independent states and has been for years. These aren't like deep blue areas. I just think it is telling that tons of Californians left California to go to those 2 states, and both of them might be moving right. They might be replacing some Democrat officials, Republican officials at very key positions like governor and state positions. Maybe they won't, but I mean, it's honestly one of the reasons why I think having California as this Democrat supermajority is a little bit of a poison pill for Democrats. Because the problem is when you have a state like California that you hold up as one of the beacons of the left-wing politicking. A lot of people say California represents where America will be in 20 years. What happens when people look at California and say, I don't want to live in a country that looks anything like California? Well, who are they going to blame except for the party that has a supermajority and is still considered deep blue? They're going to hold the Senate in their state. They're going to have another Democratic governor. And even the House seats, Central California, there is red parts of California, but yeah, the densely populated parts, the Los Angeles County parts, they're blue. And some toss-ups, which again are people moving out. But I don't know. To me, it's a little bit interesting, a little bit fascinating, and speaks a little bit to kind of what's been going on. I know we have definitely. Cardin, I won't be able to have on as consistently. I want though pretty soon to have Cardin's face on a webcam above mine, even if we can't be in the same studio. But he's a family man. He's a busy guy. I can't always get him inside, but I definitely on this channel you will be seeing more and more and more content coming up as we head into the elections. Because again, especially when it comes to hating on California, because I'm biased. But still, I mean, it is pretty interesting to see that. You have to imagine people that are leaving California probably are leaving for reason. Because I'll tell you, where I lived in California, I lived in the northern Los Angeles area, a little bit basically the end of LA County, where you start getting into no man's land in California. It is a beautiful state. I mean, the areas that the government haven't touched too bad, they're beautiful. It's just, there are times when you drive through there, even living there, it's like, man, this has got to be it. But you can only mismanage a state for so long. And then I really do feel like single party rule, especially supermajority single party dominance, it can only fail, right? There's no checks. It's like having a system of checks and balances with no checks and balances. They'll just fall apart. Whatever the will of the Democrats is done. So if there's ever any issues with what they want to do, no one stops it. No one pushes back. Just, whatever, do whatever you want. Now there is a little bit of a changing tide where, and this has been something I've been meaning to do a longer form video on for a very long time, but I haven't. And that is the role that this will kind of get back a little bit to what I was speaking about earlier, which is, I'm trying to think of a more appropriate way to, okay. there are some people in this country politically who think that we have, as a society, made certain decisions that as a society I do not believe we have made. Right? And I think, like, I'm speaking for arrogantly for others, but I just feel like this is stuff no one ever discussed. No one ever talked about. No one ever asked our opinion on. It's just kind of happening. And I think one of the big things that's happening is in, I guess, criminal justice reform, you would say. Right? Right. So this is a story. No, it's the wrong one. Where's the one I'm looking for? Sorry, I'm kind of doing this on the fly. I've gone way past my prep at this point. I'm mostly just hanging out because it's kind of fun. But this was an article that I saw. Come on. Where was it? Nope. Anyway, I can't find it here, so I'll have to just you'll have to just take my word for it. But there are people in the kind of like modern philosophy around, prosecuting of crime and kind of criminal justice stuff, that very strongly believe that men who are either suspected of or even found guilty of domestic abuse, abusing their partner and their spouse, should not be incarcerated and instead should be sent back to the home with the family. And it's not because they're pro-domestic abuse, but because they think that somehow that is the most fair thing for the family. They think the family will be under undue stress if the domestic abuser is out of the house as opposed to if they're in the house. I definitely do not agree with that. People want to make the case for it. Sure, whatever. I guess they could make the case for it, but I don't agree with that. However, there's a lot of people who not only agree with that, they are moving forward with it with laws. That is how we are actually in some cities. And the reason why I bring this up in particular, talking about California and what's happening there, is San Francisco recently recalled their district attorney, or their head prosecutor. And while this was one of many reasons, under prosecuting domestic abusers was definitely one of the things that they were angry about. And again, people were angry. People hear this and they're like, what? So he's beating a woman and you just send him back to the house? Right? It sounds insane. It sounds lunacy. But the people already elected in an office, they're like, what? This is just like settled. What are you talking about? Like, this is just society decided. Because, these arrogant politicians, when they get elected, it's what they believe. I got elected, I guess society agrees with me. And it's something people actually don't like, right? It's kind of getting back to Gavin Newsom saying that roughly 24 states in the country are a no-travel list. It's just not tenable. Oh, my God. The New York Times. Oh, whatever. I was going to show you that there's something similar going on in Manhattan right now. Right? There we go. But this, again, Manhattan DA acts unvowed to seek incarceration only for worse crimes. Alvin Bragg told prosecutors in his office to seek jail or prison time for only the most serious crimes unless the law requires otherwise. Right? The reason why I want to touch on that, I wish I still want. I have the private tab open, so it's not letting me log into it. But the reason why I wanted to kind of bring that up and talk about that, though, is the fact that what has society agreed on is the worst crimes? Where can I be pointed to where I could see where's the worst? This is the worst crime. There might be some crimes I'm like, that's a worse crime, and maybe the DA just disagrees. Maybe the DA says, nah, that's not one of the worst crimes. And it's like, well, wait, what? A crime that I think's one of the worst, you are just going to say, we recommend not sending him to prison. I mean, I don't want to bring this case up again, but this was, I think, a really good way to highlight this. And I understand that it is multifaceted. I understand that not everything is so easy. Not everything is so simple. But I want to just go through this story. So I talked about this earlier, how kind of talking about how people jump to conclusions, and a lot of people are willing to just kind of get out there and say stuff because they know, I know, this is a fake story. And then it comes out the story's not fake, this is real. But I want to go through this and this gets back to what I was speaking about a moment ago, so bear with me for a second. So an arrest was made in the assault of an Ohio girl that led to an Indiana abortion drawing international attention. Columbus man has been charged with the impregnation of a 10-year-old girl. I would consider this one of the worst crimes. Let's just keep reading. Who's traveled to Indiana to seek an abortion led to international attention following the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. Gershon Fuentes, 27, his last known address was an apartment on Columbus's northwest side, was arrested Tuesday after police say he confessed to the crimes on at least 2 occasions, and he's been charged with sexual assault, a felony in the first degree in Ohio. Again, I would consider this the worst crimes. Let's keep going. Columbus police were made aware of the girl's pregnancy through a referral by the Franklin County Children's Services that was made by her mother on June 22nd. Detective Jeffrey Hunn testified Wednesday morning at his arraignment. On June 30th, the girl underwent a medical abortion in Indianapolis, Hunn said. He also testified DNA from the clinic in Indianapolis is being testified against samples from Fuentes, as well as the child's siblings to confirm contribution to the aborted fetus. Franklin County Municipal Court Judge Cynthia Ebner said the case did not warrant Fuentes, who is believed to be undocumented, to be held without bond. I understand he hadn't been proven guilty of it yet. However, I don't know, if we think this person did this to a 10-year-old, maybe you could hold him without bond until the DNA test comes back, and if he's proven innocent, you send him on his way, right? Especially due to the fact that if you're denying someone bond, that has nothing to do with the economic status of that person. A lot of people are against bail and for bail because they think it basically is like a punishment on the poor people. People get poor people's bail. No, this person said bail be damned. He shouldn't be held in anything. He's only accused of what I would consider to be one of the worst crimes. We only have pending evidence to actually prove he was behind what I consider to be one of the worst crimes. But again, society has decided by putting people like Judge Cynthia Ebner in these positions, maybe it's not. Maybe you can. Maybe you can let an undocumented immigrant that we think his last known address was somewhere just go out in the public when he has, I'm assuming, a very long prison sentence hanging over his head. Now, it is important to point out that the judge did set a $2 million bond for Fuentes, who was being held in jail, right? That did end up happening. But my point is, there are people in powerful positions, in the decision-making positions, who in their mind, this is settled science, man. Without bond, let him go. We haven't proven it. Since we haven't proven it, whatever, just kick him free. That is, right? And the thing is, that is where you get what happened in San Francisco, where they recall their prosecutor. People vote for him because they're good. San Francisco, they're fine with liberal policies. They're fine with criminal justice reform, right? Like, that's the things they want. Though, yes, we want less people needlessly in jail. I would say this man would not be needlessly in jail, right? This would be pretty for need, right? I would say it's a pretty good reason to have someone in prison if you think they are guilty of this. And not only think they're guilty of this, or jail, not prison, you have pending evidence to prove they are guilty of this. But again, for some of the, elected officials or political officials in our country, it's been settled. We defer, we'll defer, he shouldn't have any bond. Now, again, reality prevailed, but this is just a microcosm. But the point is, it's one of the things that I think is happening that we're seeing more and more and more happen, right? People are realizing they voted with their party, and now they're seeing that things they didn't agree to, people they voted for are acting like they agreed to. So that's all I'm going to say on that. Again, I don't want to wade too far into this, but it's the kind of thing where inside of these courtrooms, inside of some of these, law think tanks, inside of these policy making rooms, this is a no-brainer. Undocumented immigrant, you can't hold him in jail because he was accused of something. That's ridiculous. It's like, well, we have very, very good reason to believe he committed a heinous crime. Is that not, we can't temporarily hold someone for that? And again, in their mind, no. He's an undocumented immigrant who's not proven. So, that's unfair. That would be the state oppressing this individual. And even though this individual might have oppressed a 10-year-old already, it's more important the state doesn't oppress him now. And that is not a widely held opinion, I would say, amongst real people in the real world, but it's a fairly widely held opinion amongst a certain, wing of thinkers when it comes to modern criminal justice. A lot of them think this is settled. A lot of them read this, don't blink an eye. You'll notice the journalist who wrote this put one sentence in. They mentioned that the Ebner said a high bond was necessary, however, due to Fuentes being a possible flight risk with if the child involved for being arrested. Right? So she changed her mind. But, originally did not warrant him to be able without bail. Now, extenuating circumstances, flight risk, safety of the child, blah, blah, blah. But the fact that they default to this, that I'm trying to highlight. The reason why I'm talking about this a lot, it is a very nuanced thing with a lot of angles. What I'm saying is there are people in positions who will default to, he's accused of impregnating a 10-year-old forcefully. Normally I would defer bond. But in this instance, he's a possible flight risk and safety of the child involved. So. And again, this is this. If this was a misquote and she originally did it, because she did set the bond, but the point is, I'm just trying to say that what I'm trying to highlight here is the fact that this is not super uncommon. There's a lot of times where if you just read like regular crime reports, it'll be like somebody stabbed 3 people and robbed somebody, and he was released same day. And some people say good, but some people aren't on board with that, and they feel like liberties are being taken. That's all I'm trying to say. So I don't want to go too far, but this is, and again, but like the what this looks like on the ground. What this looks like on the ground is, where is it? Trying to find something. Where is it? Anyway, San Francisco, who had Chester Bodwin, who was one of like the main kind of proponents of modern criminal justice reform, I would say, as an elected position. I mean, he was recalled and they just announced his replacement, right? Like this line of thinking that deferring jail time almost always, except for, again, like that one guy mentioned, the worst crimes, it's not popular with people. People read it and it shocks them, but you see people kind of going out on it anyway and doing it. Right. And it's also important to keep in mind, before this guy was recalled, he had many people in his own office fighting against this. I'm saying it's not just controversial amongst voters and citizens. This is very controversial amongst people in his own offices. But practices like this are what led to him being kicked to the curb. And, they just anointed his replacement. Jenkins asserted Bodwin had overseen a dysfunctional and politicized office culture, shifted the focus from victims to defendants. She argued that led to unjustifiably lenient penalties, including the diversions of serious crimes to pretrial programs and pressure to offer plea deals. She said she didn't oppose the larger goal of moving the criminal justice system away from over-incarceration. This is exactly, instead she said Bodwin's approach jeopardized the movement. This is the disconnect I was just trying to highlight, right? She has no problem moving away from over-incarceration, but moving away from over-incarceration isn't unjustifiably lenient penalties and just diverting diverting going into actual trials to actually prosecute these people, moving into pretrial programs for very heinous, serious crimes. These two things are mutually exclusive. You can do both. You can not do this and do this. You can move away from over-incarceration, but still protect victims and incarcerate people. And again, I think just this disconnect, I think, is actually going to, one of the things moving into the midterms, we're going to see on some of the ballots in some of these locations. There will be people voting against local Democrats because they had left-wing prosecutors behaving this way in their districts, and they don't want it to happen anymore. And again, it might be they just vote for different Democrats, which isn't a big deal either, but it's this disconnect of people getting in office. And again, he heard they want to move away from over-incarceration, so he was behaving in a way that people viewed as dysfunctional and politicized and was unjustifiably lenient. So that was the I think that'll be for real the last thing I talk about, because I really am kind of just ranting and raving now. But anyway, sorry. I think just talking about moving forward to midterms, keeping an eye on midterms. Buttigieg got ousted, but they're trying to do the same thing to Gascon in LA, right? And people trying to recall Gascon in LA, it's shockingly similar to that. It's people feeling like people that actually are running around and committing crimes that they don't want in their community are just being released into their community over and over and over again. Right. Now, LA County is massive. LA County has millions of people, so 715,000 signatures is a lot, but LA County is humongous. There's a lot more people than that in it. So it's not the most overwhelming, but I mean, this stuff's going on. This is real. And this is unfortunately, too, for Democrats on the ballot or progressives on the ballot or people who support the stuff on the ballot that aren't in criminal justice. They aren't prosecutors. They're Congress people. They're assembly people. They're senators. It reflects badly on them, and they kind of have to get ahead of it. But again, it's the general point, though, is the fact that people feel like there is a shift towards some of these legal systems favoring the perpetrators of crimes over the victims. And whether it's real or not, the perception is all that matters. And people are very much coming to that perception. So this article is just talking about how the recall, obviously if the progressive left-wing DA gets recalled, it probably isn't going to look good for progressive left-wing people on the ballot in other places. But it's a real thing, is all I'm trying to say. It's a real thing, and a lot of it comes from this disconnect. A lot of it comes from London Breed is not some hardcore MAGA right-winger. I have a feeling Brooke Jenkins isn't either. And they were describing, and again, Buttigieg had supporters. People were happy he was getting an office to do these things. I want to keep that in mind as well. This guy didn't go rogue. There is a movement towards this. There are people who voted to not recall him. And you have people that are, on the left, people that are pro-criminal justice reform who are shocked at it. And it's happening across the country and other places. And it's one of those things where, again, the kind of hyper-politicized world we live in as far as the culture stuff, there was a lot of people in San Francisco who took a lot of crap for speaking out against this guy. Because, if you're a Democrat, if you're a progressive, you wanted to defend the progressive prosecutor. But people that were Democrats and progressives and just didn't want this going on, they had to stand up to a lot of hate just to get this guy recalled. And people mostly are glad he got recalled. So, and even sorry, but something else even I want to highlight. London Breed. Well, if you don't know what London Breed is, she's the mayor of San Francisco and definitely not some, again, ultra-MAGA right-winger. She was not happy with what he was doing the entire time either. I think there is, again, getting back to Gavin Newsom's 23 states are on a no travel ban, right? It's like there are some policies that will just never, ever work in reality. And this blanket deferring to prosecute because you don't want the state to oppress people is one of them. It's never going to actually work with reality. Doesn't mean you shouldn't move away from incarcerating people needlessly, but it doesn't mean everyone who's incarcerated is needlessly incarcerated. There's a lot of people who are for very good need incarcerated. People wanted to see that. So that's it. All right. So I always do this in my streams. I always say I'm going to wrap it up. But for real now, I'm going to wrap up here probably in about 5 minutes. Just going to wind down. Again, the last hour or so, I've mostly just been kind of doing some of my own research, but with hanging out with you guys while I do it. But yeah, I don't know. I just I think we have a lot of fun coming towards us in the midterms. I'm having a lot of fun tracking it, keeping an eye on it, watching where it's headed, and just it's not entirely disconnected that they're recalling people like Buttigieg in some areas, and you're seeing, the rise of some ultra-MAGA people in other areas. Like, the Democratic Party and the progressive left, they did fly a little bit too close to the sun this term, right? Whether they want to admit it or not, they did. People on the specifically the more progressive wings of the left have simply pushed too far and too hard. And that's my way too early prediction for the midterms. Where I think we're going to see that. We're going to see the response to people who felt like the left pushed too hard. People who feel like the left took things for granted. People who feel like the left decided stuff has been settled that was never even brought up. And, you know, regular people felt like their opinion was never asked on it and it was just decided for them. I feel like that's the backlash we're going to see. Yeah, and just we live in a wild time. Yeah, I guess the last thing, just for anyone joining late, just to get back to this idea that we have a lot of people pretending they want to run for president, but it seems like we are going to be stuck with the person nobody wants to run for president, which is just life, I guess. So, everybody, I hope you have a great day. I will be on again tomorrow, and I'll be posting over the next few days, just trying to get back in the swing of things. So, again, hope you guys all have a great day. Hope you have a great evening. Hope you have a great day tomorrow. And if you're willing to join me, I'll be on tomorrow around the same time.